businesses. The whole portion was built out also would really help Waitsburg. And then I guess with regard, I've heard a couple of comments saying that, well, the money could be better spent in our town, that we need better roads and such. But my understanding is that this money is not available for those kind of uses. This is special funds, especially only for trail construction. And so, you know, while we might still need all those things, we're not going to be able to take this money and direct it to these other needs. It's not available, it's a grant, and it only has, you have to meet specific requirements to use the funds. So if we give up on these opportunities of getting these grants to improve our safety corridor, improve our economic vitality in our two towns here, somebody else will get the money, not us. It's not going to get to the place where we all also know we have needs.
Hey, my name's Becky. I actually live in Waitsburg, and I'm one of those bikers that she was talking about. I have bike packed all the way across the state of Washington from Pico to North Bend with the Police Cascades. We are trail users. I spend a lot of money with my friend Charles. We both spend a lot of money riding bikes and going to destinations that have trails. I live in Waitsburg, and I do a lot of riding in this area, both in Lowell and Sunday County. When we did our bike packing trips, we've done it twice across the Cascades. My dream would be hopefully someday that the Tucci Valley River Trail would connect all the way to the Cascades Trail. Big dream, but anyway, we support businesses along the way. We had a group of 10 people. We stopped it in the land, and Slim at Slim's fed us all breakfast, and so we definitely spend money where trails are.
Thank you.
My name's Kenny Dimick. I've been here about 6 years. I'm from Moscow, Idaho.
I don't know who's talking.
Are you referred to?
Excuse me. If we could hold that conversation, please, for a little bit later, thank you. Go ahead, sorry about that.
I'm from Moscow, Idaho, where you referred to the trails they built up there. They're abandoned railroad lines. Abandoned, not used. Also, you have fields, you have crops all the way down this rail line. So what are you gonna do, put signs up and gates? So when they're spraying, people don't get ingested spray? I mean, these are things you gotta think about. You guys are planning this not been done. You gotta think about what's gonna happen when somebody doesn't look at the sign, wheeling their kid down in their stroller and they're spraying. Who's gonna get sued for that? County. So guess who's gonna pay for that? Us. You're not thinking about the whole picture. It'd be great to have a trail. I'm not against that. It's the way you're going about it. It's completely not planned. You don't think about the little things that's gonna happen. You guys just say, hey, let's get a bunch of free money, which isn't free, and let's go spend it on this trail. If you're gonna do something like this, you don't put it next to an operating rail line. Have you ever been on a trestle when a train goes over? When I was a kid, we used to go underneath them and let the train go by. You just about fall off. Them things shake and they move. You want to add a trail on the side of the bridge, basically, on the side of the trestle? I mean, this is not, nobody's been thinking about this, how this is going to. All you're worried about is riding your bicycles up and down the trail. That's all well and good. But put it off somewhere else, away from the rail line, if you're gonna use the rail line. If you abandon the rail line, go for it. But you're worried about safety, you're gonna have a lot more safety problems.
Thank you.
Seth, when Mrs. Walsh was talking about the financing of this and that, I saw you shaking your head. Could you elaborate on these funds and where they're coming from? And how
If we
they're not going to be used
if we could talk about, I mean, if you could provide a comment, not necessarily a question to us, because we don't have time for that, but,
So are any questions going to get answered?
We have a whole presentation that will answer a lot of them. That's kind of why we put the second comment section after the trail, because we have, the consultants are here, we're gonna talk about the funds, yeah.
great, thank you.
I'd like to make a comment to the red hat.
Oh my goodness.
Well, make the comment to the port.
Okay, I mean it to the board, but it's to about what was said. Bennington Lake in Walla Walla is surrounded by farm ground. It is the #1 recreational spot in Walla Walla. There's thousands of people there. And they farm around it and they grow and habitate nicely together. There's no problem. When they spray, they do stick a sign out there that says, we're gonna spray this week. You know, it's ambiguous, you know? And nobody, it works well.
Charlie, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak to you about the trails. My name is Jerry Narquist. I live in Walla Walla, Washington. I moved back there about 1.5 years ago. But in the 70s and early 80s, I ran a bike shop in Walla Walla called Sun Sports. We used to ride out to Paddock Creek to eat dinner all the time. And we loved the ride from Walla Walla to Waitsburg. We hated the ride on Highway 12 here to eat. So I'm just pointing that out. In 2010, I ran, I spent my career in the bike industry, 35 years, and the last 11 of that was running an event called Cycle Oregon. In 2010, we brought Cycle Oregon here, and we're in Waitsburg. How many of you helped out with that? Thank you, thank you. Great experience. And I have to tell you that in 2010, when we did our surveys after the ride was over, Waitsburg was the best community that year. Everybody voted it #1. Why? Why? Because you got great rural roads to ride with low traffic counts. So you got a community that opened their arms to this event and said, bring it on. And we spent quite a bit of money in the community. It was amazing. I mean, the camel, the big bicycle that was carved into the side of the hill by the farmer. I mean, it blew people away. Now that's 2,250 riders that came into your community and spent money. So I just want to say, when you look at this trail, it's not just about cycling. It's about a lifestyle. It's a bellwether for your community, the health of your community. So there's so much research that's been done about the value of trails. You can get on the League of American Bicycle site, you can get on Bikes Belong, People for Bikes. The data that's there, and this data has been collected recently, and there's a reason for that, because we're all nervous about what's going on. But this data will show you the economic benefits of cycling. They're enormous, and walking. People that ride their bikes will come into your community and spend the night. That's where your money comes from. They're spending lodging. What's going on between these two communities right now? What's going on in Dayton and in Waitsburg? You've got these hotels opening, you've got restaurants opening. You need this trail to connect your communities. It's really going to be valuable. Trails provide social equity. You don't have to have a lot of money to be on a trail. The economics of this is just enormous. So the health benefits are good. And safety. Here's the #1 thing. I've heard safety discussed, and I know I'm getting short on time. Parents will not take their kids on Highway 12. They're not going to do it. But they will take them on a trail, and they'll be healthier for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marcy Bellamy, and I've been looking at the pros and cons of the trail for the last 4 or 5 years. And the one thing that got my attention is what kept coming up over and over again was the growing homeless problem. So rather than compare to big cities in that, I brought it down into this region. And I'm just going to share some of the facts that I came across. These are all from local newspapers. But from the Lewiston Tribune in November of 2021, Gateway Park, which is the park along the Snake River by the Taco Time. As the numbers rise, the issues associated with the homeless population are becoming more complicated. Transient individuals are camping on Army Corps of Engineer land and are particularly concentrated in the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley along the Clearwater and Snake River recreational trails on both sides of the river. According to the statement from the Corps, about the homeless issue. Public restroom and park hours have been reduced. We've seen an increase in vandalism, graffiti, damage to restroom facilities, landscape and signs, increased accumulation of garbage and personal belongings, according to the court. This greatly impacts our staff's time and duties by redirecting time and resources to resolve these issues and keep the area safe and enjoyable for our visitors. City officials cited a homeless present in the park area and associated needles, debris, human feces, etc., and determined it presented liability issues for the city. A federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which we're in that, ruling requires the city to allow homeless individuals to camp on any public property if no low threshold shelter is available, leaving the city few options, said Kevin Poole, Clarkson Public Works Director. The annual cost of maintaining Gateway, which is a little park across from Taco Time, which has no bathrooms, was about $15,000 2 years ago and has now risen to $23,000. Over the last 2 months, the city closed restrooms in all 3 city parks that have them because of vandalism committed by juveniles and homeless people who were sleeping in them at night. The city will be upgrading security cameras in its parks instead of planting trees and applying fertilizer. So a headline from November 30th, 2021, fire at homeless encampment threatens Walla Walla warehouse. January 11th, 2022, fire burned through a homeless encampment south of Topanish, included on the fire a couple of RVs, a car, and shelters. April 2021, you have the Richland Delta fire that started the homeless camp. There were cook stoves, a fire pit, tents, and chairs along Highway 240. In April, there was a fire at Columbia Point Fire at Port Park. Between those 2 fires, it was 230 acres. And then Yakima recently, their city council tabled the request. They were going to take land for a parking lot for the homeless to park their vehicles. So what I think is the port needs to have a plan. You cannot sweep this homeless problem underneath the carpet. It is big, it is complicated, and it is growing, and it is a challenge. And so I just say that you need to listen to the public, and you need to have a budget and a plan and the people in place to handle it, because we are the only city in this region right now that doesn't have the level of a problem. But you make that trail public land, they will come.
Thank you.
I've been in the community.
Speak up.
I live right on Commercial Street. I'm for Kelsey, but I'm for not Kelsey either. People were living underneath the railroad bridge, Jeff Steele had to run them off. And I'd like to know this wonderful trail, if it's going through any supporters' front yards. It's going through a lot of people's yards that will be right at their front doors. Really? Oh, okay, well, you might want to take a look again, because there's a lot of people here. That's why they're here, is because it's encroaching on front yards, front doorsteps, next to homes. Pardon me?
If we could continue your comment, please. Thank you.
So anyway, but it's just, everybody who's for this, it's not going through their front yards.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Oh, behind you.
My name is Kirsten Nicholas, and I grew up in Wyoming, lived there for 18 years, went to college, and then moved back to Wyoming. I grew up on a ranch and a farm, and I understand the rural community. I've lived here in the Walla Walla Valley since 2006, raised both my sons there. I want to speak in favor of this trail. I come over to Columbia County to ski. My sons come over to fish, we hike. But these are activities we don't all do together as a family. But biking on a safe trail, we would do together as a family. I did this in Wyoming. You go for a long bike ride, you end up eating a burger and having a beer afterwards. I did it when I lived in Wyoming, Kansas, Wisconsin. These trails help bring young people back to the community because it helps make a nice thing for you to do with your preteens and your teens. And I hear your concern about the homeless problem. We don't have that problem around Bennington Lake because it's so attractive that it's used all the time by the community. The key is make it the best trail you can so you have a lot of use of people using that trail, and then you don't get the encampments.
Thank you.
Fred Holliker from Columbia County. I understand this trail is going from Dayton to Waitsburg. I've heard figures up to $2 million. So how can Columbia County afford to buy that just so people can come and ride through our town?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Peter Polino, and I've lived in Dayton since 2001, and before that, Walla Walla. So I've been around this area for quite a while, worked for DOC, and I remember a time when they wanted to build a minimum security prison near here, and the townsfolk were, or everybody seemed against that because they didn't want that in their backyard. Well, it's my belief that there's people in this town and in the community that are a lot worse than the people that were locked up. This county's shot itself in the foot, and now all of a sudden this trail is going to be our savior. And it's going to bring, I don't own a hotel or a burger shop, so it's all going to bring money into this town for who? You know, and they're going to spend a night. That's trail one way, 10 miles each way. And you want to act like it's this great thing, you're going to drive back and forth. If you wanted to really put a trail in that mountain bikers and that enjoy, do some of the back roads here across here from Waitsburg. I've driven them. There's a lot of good roads here that are already here that you wouldn't have to spend that kind of money. And the farmers could still put out signs saying they were going to spray. So you really need to think about what you're asking for here.
Thank you.
Well, been here for a while.
Could you state your name, please?
Darlene Lambert,
Thank you.
probably 60 years or so. And I used to bike a lot. I biked from our place, which is 5 miles to town, uphill going both ways. And lots of traffic, big trucks, and I made it. There's no guarantees when we walk out the door that something isn't going to happen. As I live on the highway, so I lived there for a long, long time. I used to fix meals for people that came to the door. Don't do that anymore. But we are still having people come in to our barns and our sheds to camp, more than we ever had before, because it's what's out there, I guess, I don't know. I see Waitsburg, I see Dayton without swimming pools. Now, they say this money is not available for swimming pools. That a swimming pool teaches the children to swim. They get to visit with other kids. There's adults, there's old people. I mean, a swimming pool, these towns need a swimming pool. And so if this money is not available for these towns to have something that will benefit the whole area, then we need to change the law. Let's get the law changed so we can have a swimming pool in Dayton. More people would use it. And the same way with Waitsburg. Waitsburg needs a swimming pool. So let's change the law and put the money where it's really going to benefit the most people.
Thank you. Anyone?
I know that there was at least one online too.
Hi, I'm Chuck Bellany, and a lot of you know me because I've been at your house. There's been some comments about how safe the trail is, and so I started doing some research about how safe the trail is. Highway 12. And the Gonzaga Bulletin, they did an article, Safety of the Centennial Trail Reevaluated After Numerous Incidents, by Matthew Kincannon, staff writer, September 6, 2017. Quoting him, he says, last February, a man attacked a woman who was jogging on the Centennial Trail. Since the incident, the Spokane County Regional Crime Map shows that there have been 37 aggravated assaults, 66 thefts, 60 residential burglaries, 87 motor vehicle thefts, and 5 individual robberies in or around the immediate surrounding area of the Centennial Trail near just Gonzaga University. There's another one here that KXLY TV in Spokane put on December 15, 2020. And it was a 30-year-old Spokane man who was walking on the Centennial Trail at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he walked past some guys that looked like they were doing a drug transaction, and the guy goes, what are you looking at? He says, nothing, and he kept on walking. The guy came after him, punched him, knocked him to the ground, and started kicking him. So then he ran to a nearby nursing home. He outran the guy, and they called 911. I actually started in downtown Dayton and went door to door, all the way from downtown Dayton along 12 and all the way through Huntsville, and talked to all the different homeowners. And I had a lot of homeowners complaining because, if they put this trail in, it's going to be so close to my bedroom window that they're going to be able to look from my bedroom window when it comes down the trail. I talked to some older guys just outside of Dayton who are pretty much handicapped, and the trail would go, what little front yard they have would go through the front yard. So you have to realize a lot of these people don't have much room to put a trail in. I know that a lot of you want to have a trail to ride your bikes on, and I can appreciate that, but this is a terrible place to put a trail. And something else is, it was brought up that right to farm, Columbia County has a right to farm policy. And in their right to farm policy, which I have here, it says nothing can interfere with the legal priority of agricultural activities. Agricultural activities shall not be limited as to hours of the day or days of the week, which includes spraying and everything else. And the lady that said that this money can't be used for anything else, you're correct. The first $600,000 was for a feasibility study. But the grants that they're asking for today, if you read the 69-page grant, which I did, you can also apply for money for swimming pools. And wouldn't it be nice for Dayton to have a swimming pool or fix up the fairgrounds? Because I was talking to some people, and they said they'd bring more activities to Dayton if our fairgrounds were half decent for horses. And we got some roads that are terrible to drive down on. So I can appreciate people who live in Walla Walla who want to ride their bikes to Dayton. But how about the people who live in Dayton?
Thank you. Anyone else? Here? No. Anyone on there?
Yeah, Vicky wants to.
Okay. Vicky, go ahead, please.
Hi, Vicky Zoller, online tonight. So just for me, really quickly, this is a question that will not be answered, but I'm asking it anyway. And that is, what are you port commissioners for? And I hope you guys will think about that and offer something to our public, because it seems like you're against a lot of things, but we have yet to ever hear about what you're for. So that would be super to find out. Some of the things that have been brought up, one that Chuck just brought up, I think it's interesting that we call reading some newspaper articles research when there's actual research that has been done that you'll hear about in the presentation that's coming up, where there's stats and stuff. You guys are reading anecdotal stories that are just, one-offs. They don't necessarily apply clear across the board. And I'm kind of curious where all the homeless people are that are on our current trails. You know, we have, if it's an issue, why are they not camped all over our current trails? And where's all the poop that everybody's so worried about? I mean, I walk that trail, everybody does, not seeing that issue. So I don't see a lot of homeless issues in this community. Homelessness has a tendency to show up in communities that have a lot of resources. And we don't have the kind of resources that draw homeless people into an area. So it's really nice to have a boogeyman though. The swimming pool is being addressed. There's a committee that's working on that. And you should plug into them if you want to find out what they're doing and how they're proceeding with that. So the goal is to definitely bring a pool to this community. But we've got some very anti-grant focused leaders in our community right now, 2 of them sitting on the Port Commission and several sitting on the City Council. So when we want to write those big grants, it might be a problem getting those people to back us up for those grants. I know I'm running out of time. Let's bring tax dollars back to our county. And that's what you guys need to do as leaders. They're going to take our tax dollars, whether we like it or not. They're going to take our federal dollars. They're going to take our local dollars. And as leaders in the community, you all should be figuring out ways, along with our nonprofits and our other entities, on how to get those tax dollars back to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicki.
Something like this where you got a speaker, you need so we can hear it. I couldn't hear any of that. I know John couldn't either. I don't know how many other people could not hear what she was even saying.
Yes.
You know what? We borrowed this system from emergency management for this room. I apologize. It was the best they had. I don't know what else to do about it. I'm sorry.
You asked them to write in chat. Why don't you have them do that rather than speak? Because we can't do it.
Okay, well, let me see if I can find out if there's a way to turn the speaker up, okay? I have this fun little device. Let me see if I can. The next time somebody speaks online, I'll see if I can turn it up. There's a volume button here.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you see anyone else who has their hand up?
Yeah, I think it just did something. I don't see anybody else at this time.
Very good. Laura.
Yes. So to answer your question about wanting to hear that, you didn't want to hear that. It was probably best that it was the way it was. I didn't think it was appropriate for the insults and that kind of crap. So I do want to say one thing about the comments, and that was Vicki Zoller, if you want to know where all the poop is.
Okay, if we could hold the comments to the trail.
Oh, sorry. If you want to know where all the poop is that was just mentioned, it's on the trail behind my house. That is on the Touchy River. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you.
A few years ago, I lived, 200 yards from the Touchy on the trail. And there was a guy, I don't remember the whole story, but one of them was riding a bicycle and a kid come along and knocked somebody over onto the riprap next to the trail. And that guy laid there till the ants were covering him up before somebody found him. What's gonna happen on this trail if something like that happens? Is there gonna be somebody on there every day to protect the people?
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, I would just like to.
If you could state your name, please.
I'm sorry, I'm Robin Fitch.
Thank you.
I and my husband live on the Touchy Trail. It's in our backyard. And we find that is a community builder. I don't know why anyone would not see it that way. People talk, kids walk, kids run, kids ride their bikes, and adults do too, walk the dogs. And people I don't know say hi, and it's a happy place. It's a community builder. That's point one. Point two is I didn't hear any insults in Vicki's. She was arguing. So please, if you don't like what somebody says, don't throw insults back. That was an insult.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're really keeping me to aggressive.
I'm Mike Warren.
Excuse me, there was a gentleman behind you. I apologize.
People don't think there's a homeless problem here. There's squatters all over the country. Drug dealers all over the country. And drugs. And tents are gonna come up on the trail. Now, who's gonna take care of those tents? I guarantee it's gonna happen. They're gonna show up there and they're gonna squat. And that's exactly what they do.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Mike Barney. I worked for DOT for 8 years in the mitigation. And our job is to go around and take care of wetlands and trails over on the west side. I don't know how many trails we worked on that we actually had people shooting up drugs, that we had to run off so we could do our job. You had to wear muck boots to wash your boots off before you got back in the vehicle because you were walking in poop. And to get somebody to move out, you have to get the state patrol to issue a speed warning, and they got 72 hours, and then all they do is move to another spot and do the same thing. We have picked up hundreds and hundreds of bags of garbage that they leave, and some of these places that they stay are so nasty, you can't hardly stand to walk by them because they stink. And I've been through it, and it's not fun. And I think that you're talking about not having the homeless here, they will come. They had to shut down some of the rest areas over on the west side because homeless were camping in there, destroying the bathrooms. That was one of my jobs, was working in the bathrooms. They were ripping urinals off the walls. They were putting needles in toilet paper holders. So when you reach for toilet paper, you got stuck. They would stick them in the door. So when you grab the door to the bathroom, you get needles in your hands. They also put them in the tile on the floor sticking up. So when you walked in, you got a needle in your foot. And that's the reason I'm dead set against it, because there's too much of this goes on. And it will happen here, I guarantee you.
Yeah, say it again.
Are we allowed to speak?
Well, it would be better if people who haven't spoken spoke.
If we could
Yeah.
just hold the
Because I feel we're getting off track, and even if we talk about just something from here to the trailer court and call it a sidewalk instead of a trail, maybe it would be a little more acceptable and not have it go as far. We have to limit it, at least take care of small sections at a time.
Thank you. So has anyone not spoken, that wants to speak again? If we could hold those comments, these two have not spoken, so yes, go ahead.
Bob Yost. It looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it's a duck.
Say that again?
If it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. Sidewalk, trail. I live on this street. I've lived here for 50 years on this street. That's designed, the trail shows it encroaching right along our property all the way up through here. On this side of the street, we can't park on the street on the other side or use the other side. The access, if you wanted to put the trail there, put it on the other side of the rail. Nobody accesses their property from that side.
Thank you, Bob.
And one more thing, there's already a trail, bicycle trail, starts at the end of town here, and goes all the way to town. The state provides it, it's on both sides of the street. You're bringing money and business into town with these riders, put them on the business side of town.
Okay, well, I hope that everyone who hasn't spoken has had the opportunity. Lisa, and then we're going to have to start because otherwise we won't have the presentation.
I just want to make reference to the ducks. I'm part of the committee that's working on the pool. So my name is Lisa Naylor. If you guys want information about the pool, talk to me or Diane McKinley. My comments about the trail, I did send copies of this report. It was dated late 2019. The economic, environmental, and social benefits of recreational trails. Washington State and the Washington State Recreation Conservation Office through Eco Northwest prepared the report. I asked those guys that did say that, note chapter 4 economic contributions and chapter 6.3 property value gains. So I just want to mention that. I know we, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Let's have a meeting. Okay. Okay, I guess we start. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Jenny, administrative items.
Minutes?
Minutes. Did everyone read the minutes?
Yeah.
Any questions or corrections or comments?
Not for me.
Tony?
Didn't see any, no.
Okay. Can we have a motion to accept?
I would move to accept the minutes as written.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I clarify, is that both sets? Both sets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, second item on the agenda is to review the monthly budget report and to approve vouchers.
Do you have any questions on the budget report that I sent to you?
I do appreciate that is actually in
We printed it large.
a value that I can see, which is super nice, for sure. Other than that, I don't have any questions that I saw. I got questions, but nothing that, is just, moving through the process.
Seth, do you have any questions?
I was only curious about the $2,500 to the chamber for the, community.
That's there, we have a contract with the Chamber of Commerce to provide assistance with our economic development contract. So $10,000 a year, we pay them $2,500 a quarter and they provide a report, just like we have for, I don't know, probably the last 6 or 7 years. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. So what's that?
It's for.
Provide a report?
Yep, it's providing economic development services, especially in the downtown area. And so they provide a report to us and tell us what they've done for the quarter, what businesses they've visited, what businesses have opened and closed. Yeah, so it's a report that shows their work and then we pay them. We have a contract with them.
Pay them $10,000 to.
A year.
Report?
Yep, a year. Yeah, 25 a quarter, 2,500 a quarter. We have a contract. So it's all spelled out.
Any other questions on the expenses and income?
No.
I'm hearing none. Okay, tablets. Jenny?
Okay, well, one other thing I wanted, before you move off of budget report,
we
I
need to
did,
approve
well, I
vouchers.
just, oh yeah, you do need to approve vouchers, but you can sign them. So if you don't have any questions, you can sign them. We have the document here, you can sign at the end of the meeting. But I did, let's see. I did want to discuss the budget just a little bit further after, because of the things that were brought up at the trail workshop. So when I provided a kind of a presentation to the commissioners in their packets. Let's see, I think I put that in a different presentation, didn't I? Hang on a minute. I wanted to make sure that people are, and that we are not operating at a deficit. So I have placed this, it's not perfectly easy to read, but I've put some budget numbers on the screen. And what I wanted to point out is if we have cash carryover every year, that it's really hard to budget a year in advance and know exactly when everything's going to be spent or not. So sometimes we have income that we'll get one year, but we're going to spend it the next, and vice versa. Sometimes we'll have expenses one year and we get reimbursed the next. So it's hard to just look at the 2022 budget without the background of understanding the cash carryover. And that's really what this budget was built on. Part of it was cash carryover. And then also, and I talked to Seth about this individually, so he already knows this, but I put some stars on this chart to show the things that we budgeted because we had plenty of cash carryover last year. So when the commission was budgeting in October, we added some things to the budget that if we didn't have the money, we wouldn't do it. One of them was a halftime economic development coordinator. I'd really like to have another one again. I haven't had one for about 2 years. Another was a update for the Blue Mountain Station website because it's old. Another one was community support and economic development. If we didn't have the ADO grant from the state, we just wouldn't do those 2 line items. They would be gone. The architecture and engineering right here, this is all bike trail. And then we budgeted $50,000 for design of a potential new building because we talked about how we don't have any open space. All of our buildings are rented at the Rock Hill Industrial Park and Blue Mountain Station, 100% occupancy. So that's why we budgeted that in case we wanted to design a new building. Don't have to spend it. We haven't yet, but we could if we wanted. And then maintenance, land and capital improvements, I had put $20,000 more in this year because we knew we had that roof to replace. Broadband infrastructure is grants and special projects is grants. So if you look at the next page, so this is the revenues without any cash carryover. And there's our giant expenses, which would make anybody think, oh my God, what is she doing? And then if you look at the next page and you take out all of the expenses that I mentioned, shoot, I can't scroll. If this is the non-grant revenue, if you take out all of the items that I mentioned and all of the grant revenue and expenses that go with it, the bottom line is 817,328, which is almost exactly the same as the non-grant revenue. So if we don't have the grant revenue, we don't do the other stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right, that's it. And we can move on.
Okay. Any questions on the vouchers?
No.
Johnny?
No, thank you.
All right, on to tablets, follow-up.
Okay,
issue
yeah.
From the workshop.
So when we had our workshop and we were talking about the Zoom stuff, the port attorney had agreed that probably having an electronic device at the meeting so people could see your faces would be good. So I did a little tablet research. We can buy 10-inch Google Android tablets on Amazon for $79, pretty inexpensive, Wi-Fi only. So it's not like mobile, but Wi-Fi only. A refurbished laptop, the cheapest I could find was really about $260, and iPads are about $400-ish. So we could pretty easily buy the Google tablets if that was acceptable. We could pretty easily do that, pretty low expense.
Okay.
So, but you guys need to decide if we're gonna do that, because that's not something, we can find a spot in the budget. It's not a problem. Like I said, I usually am a conservative budgeter, so we have plenty of money to do it, but you guys would need to, because we've never purchased an electronic device for commissioners before, probably be best if you voted to do it.
Yeah.
Gave me a budget and voted to do it.
Do we have to modify the policy? Because the policy only talks about cell phones.
It's only about cell phones, I know.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say no. If you take action, I mean, if you've got a vote in the minutes, that is a valid action. So,
We can possibly amend the policy to reflect that if necessary.
sure. Yep, sure.
It might be worth checking at Costco. I know when I bought this tablet, they had the Samsung tablets, the Tab A's for a very reasonable price for around 100.5 to 169. So that might be something kind of mid-range.
Do you think it's better?
I don't know if it'd be better quality than the Amazon $79 one or not, but
What was it again?
Samsung Galaxy Tab.
Okay.
They're significantly less than the iPads and have a little better luck.
I thought I'd check with Inland Cellular too. We just didn't want any with
No, we don't need anything with
cell service, but
It's perfect, but.
yeah, okay. All right, so yes, one of you want to make a motion and set a cap for the budget?
I would move that we purchase tablets for the commissioners to use for port purposes. And I would propose a total budget amount of, say, $500
Okay.
for everything.
And we have plenty of funds for that.
Yeah, we've always have miscellaneous. We've got, I put more in the office equipment budget this year because of the software and other things we continually having to buy. So there might just be room there, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I would second that motion. If we need to make adjustments from there, we can.
Okay, all right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay.
All right. update on port assets, the Rock Hill Industrial Park.
All right, I'm gonna make this quick because I know that's not why everybody's here. But, so we had the industrial park graded. It's been very wet. We only got about half of it done. So, Barker's gonna have to come back because and they were supposed to come yesterday, but of course it was snowing and raining, so. We have an inspection at the USDA building on Monday. That rental that's our full service rental, and it's, we have an annual inspection from the GSA. And there's a Rock Hill Trail workday. The Blues Crew is gonna come and help, widen the trail on the hill. And so there is a document in the back. They need volunteers, probably up to about 24 people. They're gonna bring some people from Walla Walla, but if anybody is interested, May 1st on a Sunday afternoon. So let me know if you want to know any more about that, but there are flyers in the back, I think.
All right.
Is there a time for that?
Yes, it's 1 o'clock. Is that right? Yeah. 1:15. Oh, yeah, 1 o'clock is the tailgate safety meeting and 1:15 to 4:45 is the work. And they have a suggestion for bringing a small day pack, wear boots, long pants, cannot wear sneakers or sandals. Because we actually have one of the tenants in the industrial park is going to donate the money to rent a brush thing. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a push behind brush hog to cut along the edge. And then they're going to widen the tread, they call it, which is the trail. So there will be power tools involved, if you like power tools.
All right, thank you. Lions Ferry Marina.
Another inspection, and US Corps of Engineers annual inspection is on the 2nd of May. Our concessionaire is fabulous, and we've been passing those inspections with flying colors, so I don't have any concerns, but I do go out and spend the morning out there with the Corps and walk around, and they look, open things and make sure we've got chemicals stashed properly, and they look at the wellheads, they look at the septic system, they look at the whole thing. And then, because that is a public water and septic system, we have to schedule another visit with the Department of Health to look at it's called a large on-site septic system. So, we have to schedule a site visit with them, but it's just a typical thing. We've gotten both of our permits renewed for the year.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that?
Nope.
Okay. Blue Mountain Station.
We discussed the soil test, the arsenic that came up at a meeting a couple of meetings ago, and it turns out the gardener was already having the soil tested. So I just told her we'd pay for that portion of it. It was only $25 and it came back within the acceptable range. I think it was between 0 and 20 was the range, and I think it was 14. So it was no problem. Yeah.
Great.
And so when I talked to the guy at McGregor, he said there was no need to test the rest of the site if that one came back okay.
Good.
So, yeah, and then we have had to do some window repair at the Bell Farmhouse. That's one of the invoices you saw on the financial report from our local handy guy, Double T. Those old windows in that farmhouse, some of the frames on the outside were bad. So we went ahead and did some repair there. Garbage pickup is coming at Blue Mountain Station. I've had volunteers we always have volunteers pick up garbage in the industrial park, and especially at Blue Mountain Station. I think it blows out of the back of the BDI trucks when they're leaving town because it's always along the highway. So we have volunteers do it every year. So I'm working on that. And Seth had expressed, all of you did, desire to tour the businesses down there. And I would like to take you on a tour. So I don't know if we need to do it right now, but we should schedule a tour. And it would be, if all three of you together, it would be a port meeting, but it would just be a workshop because we wouldn't discuss anything or take any action. We just have to do public notice. So I don't know if you want to try to schedule that now, or you want to do it at a separate time, or what you want to do about that.
We might as well go ahead and schedule something like that. No time like the present, we're here.
Okay, so probably, any chance we could do it on any chance we could do it before 5? Or do we need to wait till 5, Johnny?
On what day?
Whatever day works for you. Like a Thursday or a Friday?
I would prefer not a Thursday.
Okay.
I have things Thursday afternoons.
Wednesday? Does any day?
How much before 5? Like 4 o'clock or 3:30 or what do you think?
I was thinking 4.
4?
Yeah.
I can make that work.
4 on the 27th. Does that work for you?
7th, yeah.
Okay.
April 27th?
Yes.
All right, let me see if I gotta look at mine.
Oh, yeah.
I can make it work.
Okay.
I got a meeting at 5, but I can do something with it. I'll do it.
4:30.
No, 4.
4. Blue Mountain Station, Wednesday, the 27th at 4 o'clock.
How long do you anticipate? Like 4 to 5? Is that what you're thinking? Or
Oh, at least, it's pretty interesting. Might be 5:30, really. Once you start going through the buildings. Okay, and that's it.
Okay, Columbia Rail.
We got a call that there was a lot of garbage under the railroad bridge, in town, so we had, our volunteers go and pick it up. Wasn't actually as bad as I expected. It was mostly, looked like garbage that had blown in and maybe some that had been placed there by folks hanging out there, but it's all done. And I talked to the rail operator and he said they should have the right-of-way spray done this week. I suppose it's probably gonna depend on weather, but they do have a different concession or a different spray company than last year, so we all need to hope it works. Because last year it didn't. So, and that company went out of business. Yeah, so, but he said it was more expensive too. And, yeah, I think garbage. And then, oh, and we did get some questions on a caboose down by Huntsville. And apparently they still use cabooses. So it was a request from a reporter, just curious about cabooses, but apparently they still do use them. So that's it.
All right, into Community and Economic Development, Executive Director's Report.
Okay, I just keep it very brief. I did go down to Walla Walla with the child care group and we toured my friend's house. It was really cool. And I think there are some other folks getting to go on tours, if I'm not mistaken. I think Paul Isles working on that. And I think there is a community forum coming up on that, probably in May. And I'm continuing work with a local business on value-added ag expansion. And you guys all see the plethora of meetings and things I go to, so we'll just call it good for now and move on into our next item everybody's waiting for.
Okay. All right, so let's get into the Tushy Valley Trail.
All right, so between Anderson Perry and I, we're gonna give a little update. I can tell by some of the comments, we need to give a bigger update than I was expecting to, because yeah, if you guys don't mind moving up here. So we have Brian Hansen and Adam Schmidtgall from Anderson Perry in Walla Walla, and Ken Van Voorhees with, he's a subcontractor for them and does landscape architecture and lots of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and give an update. And I may go into a little bit more detail on some of it because of some of the things that I've heard said today that I think have changed that people may not be aware of. So, I don't know what to do with this. Okay. So, you can see, okay, all right. So, I'm going to give a little bit of background. Starting in the mid-2000s, the Economic Development Committee that I worked on at the time, I think I was at the chamber then, a lot of community members started placing more paths and trails as on our priority project list. In between 2015 and 20. Regional Trails Plan with input from Dayton, Walla Walla, and Milton Freewater residents. In 2018, over 100 people attended a workshop in Dayton on trail planning. And as this idea was being discussed at community meetings and workshops, I keep having to let people in. The following municipalities put the idea of improving paths and trails, and some of them specifically the Dayton to Waitsburg Trail, in their comprehensive plans. That sets the stage for future land use decisions. So the city, county, and port went together on a cooperative parks master plan. And this is important because if you do not have an approved plan, you can't apply to the RCO for trail funding or for any kind of funding. So this makes the city, the county, and the port eligible for RCO funding. We did that. There was a group of students from Eastern that came and helped put that together. And then we've updated it once since then. So it's been about 2 years since it was adopted, I think. It is listed in the City of Dayton Comp Plan, the City of Waitsburg Comp Plan, Columbia County Comp Plan, and the Port of Columbia Comp Plan. And at least one public hearing was held before adoption of each of the above documents. And in the case of the Parks Plan, there were 3 public hearings. 2019, we submitted the application to the DOT for trail design funds. These could not be used for anything else except bicycle and pedestrian projects. And we had the support of these regional entities. We got letters of support from them when we submitted the application. And this is the brief process we went through, or brief, I can't call it brief, exhausting. From 2021, June of 2019 is when we started our landowner outreach. We've had public information meetings, a design charrette. We entered into the contract with Anderson Perry. We completed a concept plan, design and engineering began, and we had a public information meeting last April. We were honestly surprised after hearing from community members for years that they wanted a trail. We thought we were doing the right thing by inviting the community into the planning process early, but it turns out people were frustrated because we didn't have the answers, but we hadn't done the design yet, so we didn't have the answers. So now we have lots of the answers. Why build a trail? This was the port's primary purpose for engaging in this process when it was placed in our comprehensive plan. And that is to bring new visitors to Dayton to spend money at our stores, hotels, restaurants, and businesses. It is about economic development. I know there's a lot of talk about health, and that is fine, but for the port, the primary purpose is economic development. It is a lucrative industry that we thought we could take advantage of. I'm going to compare it to Lions Ferry Marina for a very specific purpose. The port in the 1970s worked with the Corps of Engineers to construct and maintain Lions Ferry Marina. And we used funds from the RCO, which is one of the granting agencies we're going to talk about a little later. It is a granting agency that says once you take their funds, you have to keep that a recreation facility in perpetuity. So imagine my surprise after I was at the port for a few years and the state called and said, we want to report on those funds, because I didn't even know we'd taken them. So luckily we have kept the marina going. The purpose was to provide recreational access to water for the citizens of Columbia County. And this was happening as the Snake River dams were being constructed. And so we were also trying to take advantage of river shipping. Creates opportunity for private sector. We lease the facility to a private concessionaire who operates it as a private business and creates jobs and brings outside dollars to Columbia County. And the port does contribute $20,000 a year to help maintain the facility. So the trail is similar in that we're working with the cities of Dayton and Waitsburg and Washington State Parks. We are hoping to use funds from the RCO and the DOT. Purpose is to provide recreational facility, bring visitors and outside dollars to the community, provide opportunity for recreation business development, and we would contribute approximately $25,000 per year to maintain the trail. This is just a fun picture of Lions Ferry. There's the breakwater. There's covered moorage, store and restaurant, 18 full RV hookups. There's 2 wells, all kinds of things. So why is this still on the port's agenda? There is a state law that says port's work is driven by their comprehensive plan. It's actually called a comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. That's left over from early legislation. So we have 4 core lines of business in our comp plan and strategic plan. And economic development, recreation, and transportation are 3 of them. And I've just listed the specific items in our comprehensive plan that talk about either supporting recreation or actually call out the trail. So that is why I am continuing to work on it and why I have brought this, this presentation to the commission tonight. We had a 30% design public meeting in last April, and we actually addressed a lot of the things that were brought up tonight. We had a representative from the Department of Ag pesticide program, and we talked a lot about spray and adjacent fields. We had a representative from the Bill Chipman Trail between Pullman and Moscow, and he talked to us a lot about homelessness, litter, spraying. They do close the trail if there is a farmer spraying something that is toxic to or can be toxic to people. They go out and put signs up and close the trail. So that is a common practice. And we had representatives from Palouse to Cascades Trail, Columbia Plateau Trail, and the Columbia County Sheriff was able to verify that if they're called, they will respond. And his comment was at the time that there was not an increase of drug traffic because of the Dyke Trail. People use it for whatever, but it can't be, the increase in drugs is not attributed to a trail directly, according to him. We addressed some of these community concerns at the meeting as well, lots of them. And on our website, if it interests you, we taped that meeting. So we taped our last workshop with the Port Commission. It's on there to watch. And then the other one is still here too somewhere. But anyway, so there is a lot of documentation on our website, including we took the public comments people had made and the concerns, and we asked experts and tried to come up with answers. So we really have tried to answer those things best we can. Maintenance plan, we developed a draft maintenance plan based on input from the other trail communities. And that is where we came up with between $15,000 and $25,000 per year that would probably need to be budgeted for maintenance. And I wanted to note that the rail operator is supportive of the trail. He believes that it will help with the maintenance of the right of way, and he does not believe that it will harm his ability to operate this train. Our train goes between 5 and 10 miles an hour, so it's not exactly a death trap. Another thing that comes up a lot is taxes. And I would like to make sure that everyone knows that as in my knowledge, in the history of the port's 63-year history, they have never raised taxes in Columbia County and have never asked the citizens to raise taxes. And if you look at this chart, we are this little tiny pink sliver right here. So we are, if not the smallest, close to the smallest taxing district in the county. So it's really, it's not a giant amount of money out of people's pockets to have the port. We think we provide a pretty good value. It is normal to use taxes to pay for parks and recreation facilities. Columbia County has no county parks. We're one of the only counties in the state that doesn't have a park. The port has revenue other than taxes. We have 25 business tenants that pay us rent. And so we do have ways of paying for maintenance. So I'll give a summary of reasons to proceed. No new taxes are proposed. Funds to maintain the trail will come from existing port funds. The records research, Anderson Perry, I don't know if they want to talk about it in any more detail. We shared this with the commission at the workshop a couple of weeks ago. We have done extensive research from Dayton to Waitsburg, and all the deeds show the port owns the land outright, except within the city of Dayton, which we already knew. City of Dayton was here first. So if anyone has a deed or a document that claims otherwise, please, we'd like to see it because we have not been able to find any. So we do own the right of way. It is narrow in a few spots, but we do own the right of way. Another thing is that the trail has been, we're proposing to move it off of Commercial Street. Apparently people didn't know that, but that's not the proposal any longer. We've tried to address community concerns as best we can. We have the Cooperative Parks Master Plan, so we are qualified for funding. Laws governing ports allow this type of development. Multiple studies show that recreation benefits communities. The design funds we've already received can be used as match for RCO, and grant funding is now available. So I'm going to let Anderson Perry talk a little bit. And then I'm going to see how well, I guess we're not hearing from them. Just let us know if you can hear them or not, okay? Because they're facing this way. So out there in the crowd, if you can't hear them, let us know.
I'll try and talk loud. Hello, I'm Brian Hansen with Anderson Perry. I'm an engineer on the project. And as Jenny mentioned, we went over this presentation and more with the commissioners at the workshop. What I'm going to talk about here is the costs of the trail as we have done estimates through the 30% plan.
If you could.
Louder?
Can you stand up and face us?
Am I supposed to face you or them?
Right here would be fine. If you can still see.
I can see from over here.
And just kind of project.
So I'm Brian Hansen with Anderson Perry. Is that better?
Yes.
I'm an engineer on the project. What we've presented this information to the commissioners at the workshop, which Jenny mentioned that presentation is on the website. What I'm going to talk about briefly before handing it over to Adam and Ken is the estimated cost for the trail and the steering committee that provides us, Anderson Perry, the direction on our design and our direction for moving forward with the process comes from the steering committee. And these 4 phases that the steering committee has worked through to look at as potentials for starting points for building the trail. As you can see at the top, the trail is 9.7 miles from Waitsburg to Caboose Park in Dayton. And the estimated total cost is $12 million. That includes 4 trailheads, 2 bridges over the Touchy River, 7 culverts over smaller streams or rivers, rail crossings, a relocation of rail line near Huntsville, and many more improvements along that almost 10-mile stretch. The steering committee has looked at 4 phases. The first on the list being from Caboose Park in Dayton to the Valley View housing, which is just west of Blue Mountain Station. That's 1.6 miles in length, approximate cost of $2.8 million. Again, that section includes a bridge over the Touchy River, work within the city of Dayton, and a trailhead at both ends of that section. The next section that would be a potential to start would be Blue Mountain Station to the state park. You can see that's $3.7 million. It's the longest of the sections, but it also has the least amount of major ticket items. So you get a lower cost per mile of trail. There is no bridge crossing there of the Touchy River, et cetera. The next section you can see is 2 miles from the state park to Huntsville. Again, $3.4 million. That has a crossing of the Touchy River, a trailhead. It has some railroad relocation. And then the final phase or option there is Huntsville to Waitsburg, which is 2.25 miles. There is a challenging drainage ditch that the trail has to navigate around as part of the cost, and that's why you can see that cost is slightly higher per mile than the Blue Mountain Station to State Park. So those are the 4 kind of pieces of the trail that the steering committee looked at as potentials for first phases of funding. And the even years, so this being 2022, are the years where RCO, which we're going to talk about, and the DOT have specific funding for pedestrian and trail type facilities. So the reason we're here talking about funding a potential first phase of the project is because it's an even year and those grant applications are due in the next couple months. And so with that, Jenny, if you want to go to the next slide. Overall, I talked about the 4 phases or the 4 sections of the trail. The steering committee has decided that the kind of option 1, the most logical starting point is this first phase from Caboose Park at the top right of the screen down to Valley View at the bottom end of the screen. You can see we've got some pros. It provides a path from town all the way to Valley View. It adds a pedestrian bridge across the Touchy River where historically people have been walking across the railroad bridge. We've heard a lot about the need, the desire for a pedestrian route across that location. The con at the bottom, it's the shortest distance of the 4 options. As I mentioned, this section of trail is estimated at 2.8 miles of cost. We've looked at potential for some RCO funding, which would be that area in blue or purple down at the south end, which is approximately $300,000 of trailhead and trail and a major starting point for the trail. And then there's a bridge over the Touchy River in the upper right. The bridge is going to be approximately 150 to 200 foot span, which for a pedestrian bridge of that scale is estimated cost of $800,000. So the reason why the cost is so high for this shorter length of trail has a lot to do with that bridge. And then Jenny, if you'll go to the next.
Well, and it would point out that it goes on Main Street, not Commercial Street.
Correct, sorry. When we showed the 30% plans to the community, to the commissioners last year, the trail was located along Commercial Street. And the steering committee and the port took all the feedback from the community about the location of the trail through that portion of Dayton. And we looked at 3 different alternatives through town. One being what was shown in the 30% plan along Commercial Street, one which is what is up here, and one that was on the other side of Commercial Street, south of the railroad tracks. Ultimately, the steering committee, having heard the community's feedback, looking at the situation, talking with the city of Dayton, we've revised the route from the Touchy River to Blue Mountain Station. So it now crosses the river, comes to the south to Main Street, ties in with existing Main Street improvements, which are sidewalks and bike lanes, continues those improvements to the end of town, and then becomes a separated trail on the north side of the highway till we get to Blue Mountain Station, around Blue Mountain Station and back onto the port right away, railroad right away. So this is the plan has been modified since the last public meeting we had. And so you'll see on here that the trail is located on Main Street for the section between Blue Mountain Station and the bridge.
Next.
Yep.
Just add real quickly to that slide, Brian, if you don't mind. Just for the education, of everyone, the purple is the port property, the big purple on the street. And so that's why the first one was along Commercial Street. The yellow that you see along the highway is part of a safety corridor plan that Dayton has adopted that Jenny referred to. And in the upper corner is the blue. That is the Main Street corridor.
Commercial Street corridor plan.
Commercial Street corridor plan. I just wanted to show those colors because they represent some things, planning operations and activity that you all have done in the past. So don't be confused by the different things, but we wanted to represent past activities that are leading to where we are today. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you, Ken. And then this slide shows the other option that the committee sees as a potential for grant applications this go around. This section is from Blue Mountain Station at the northeast of the page to Lewis and Clark Trail State Park. Again, the longest section of the 4 that we showed earlier. It has a trailhead at the beginning, a trailhead at the end, and then
trailhead here.
Yep, trailhead at Blue Mountain Station, trailhead at the park. There are some minor stream crossings that would be handled with box culverts, but there are no bridges. There aren't very many big ticket items. This is mostly an asphalt trail for 4.2 miles. You can see at the bottom, we put some pros, which again, there's a clear beginning and a clear end to this section. You start in Dayton at Blue Mountain Station, you go to the park, you start at the park there. And you'll see, as my colleagues talk in a moment, that's one of the things that they like to see in the grant applications. The con here is that this is a section that is adjacent to landowners that are opposed to the trail. So there's a decision to be made about the trail and that feedback. With that, I'm going to pass it to Ken with SPVV to talk about RCO and their grant funding opportunity in the even years.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Brian. Can everyone hear me? So my name is Ken Van Voris. I'm a landscape architect. We've worked on a number of trails in eastern Washington, do a lot of park things. We do grant applications for communities in basically eastern Washington and help them, assist them. I am not a government agent. I am a consultant to these folks. We just help communities like yourself go through the process in some park planning and getting the grants to RCO. So just real quickly, if you're not familiar with the RCO, it's the Recreation and Conservation Office. It's a branch of our government that's in the state of Washington that receives money from the federal government, and I'll show that closer when we get it as part of the state tax dollars, and then they distribute it to for their purposes, which are pretty big. They got a big umbrella, small budget, big umbrella, but they do things like fish and wildlife habitat restoration, access to the rivers that you all have received, parks, recreation, and trying to think, there's like 7 or 8 categories, but they take all this information, run it through their process, and then they select, the process is that they select the highest ranking ones that meet needs of the community. So it's a pretty stringent process. As everyone has heard, it's a biannual, meaning it only accepts applications every 2 years. This year is an application. You get the funding, you build your project and move on. But as Jenny said, when you receive RCO funding, the intent is that it will stay as a recreational and conservation purposed property in perpetuity. So it's important that commissioners understand that and that we all understand how that is, because once you receive these dollars, the goal is to just keep recreation as an active part of our community. You can go on to the RCO's website. It's called Recreation Conservation Office, Washington State Gov, and they'll talk about all these different things that you'll see. If we might, let's see. Let's go to the next slide, because where this particular project sits, it's called the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So that is a segment of the bigger umbrella that this particular project would fall under as far as an RCO grant. They also do, as others have mentioned, they do pools, they do splash pads, they do parks, they do all things recreational. They even do land acquisition. It's a pretty tight budget, so it's very competitive. It's needs-based, so they look at communities that are needs-based, and Columbia, the Port of Columbia and the county are high ranking in that need. So the opportunity is very good, but it is a process, and funding is limited and has a number of elements that go with it. I won't go into the detail. Again, this is on their website. I did want to point out the blue column and just kind of walk through a few of the highlights. I encourage everyone to go look at this if you're interested. And then on the right side, those are all recipients of RCO grants from 1965, I think, or 65 to 2015. And you'll see Dayton is actually on there.
Yep, there it is,
Or Columbia
Dayton.
County is not, because it was a water access, not a land and water conservation grant. That's why you probably don't see it there. But with that said, local governments and special agents can fly, tribes and special purpose districts. That's what the port is. Types of projects funded: acquisition and development and renovation. This is a development project. Funding comes from royalties, offshore oil, gas drilling, and the federal government distributes funding to the state by the formula based on population and land area. So the dollars that we're talking about, just so we're clear, it is some federal dollars and some state dollars. So when people want to know where it's coming from, that is where it's at. The RCO leverages the state dollars for the grants recipients. So when they say that, currently it's a 50-50 match. So when we go for grants of this type, the agent, port in this case, is expected to have 50%, and then the RCO grant is 50%. Pretty obvious, pretty straightforward. But the point here is that RCO wants to make sure communities like you have an investment in it. They're not just going to hand out money to somebody and say, good luck, we're not doing it. They want to make sure there's an investment and some ownership to it. What does it do? You know, when it talks about here, the outdoor recreation generates about 21.6 billion in in a year in spending on trips and equipment in Washington State and supports nearly 200,000 jobs. That's that economic side. Now, that's RCO probably as a whole, but it does fall under that land and water conservation grant application. And then you can, again, reach out and do it. I've made copies for the commissioners, so if you need them.
Board.
Yeah, I'll go around and hand them over there.
Created a trap up.
We're bringing this, we're not bringing it. This is an opportunity that this particular project fits under. It does not fund the entire project. In fact, it's meant to just help close the gap when funding is not available. It's important to remember that. So as we talk about other funding opportunities that again come up that Adam's going to address, this is part of that. It's not the whole picture. But it is take a community effort. It does take citizens and individuals. The cash outlay is a little bit, comparatively speaking. In-kind donations can be provided as that. So it's a little complex, but we need to understand, and there's a lot of specific elements that need to happen prior to an application, which have been done. And Jenny went through all those in the beginning. So if, as we talk or listen, I encourage you to think about it because it is your tax dollars, money generated that would come back into the community. And we've helped a number of communities around. Waitsburg, actually, no, I'm sorry. Pateros and all over Eastern Washington, there's grant applications out there. And they're building little parks, skate parks. The splash pad in Waitsburg, it's not an RCO one, but they are addressing some of those recreation needs that are out there. So with that, that's kind of a RCO. If anybody has any questions, we can address them at the end.
Okay.
Thank you. And Adam, talk about the engineers.
This is the engineer side. I'm Adam Senegal from Anderson Perry. I'm also an engineer on the project with Brian and Ken. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the WashDOT pedestrian bicycle funding opportunity. And I think it's important to say that when we started this project a number of years ago, this was the program that's funding the current design. $637,000 was the application we put in.
Just a little bit more.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
So did you hear anything or should I start over or should?
Go forward.
Keep going.
Okay. So when we applied for that first funding in the grant application, it's always been the intent, and it was spelled out in the application that this was one of the grant applications that we would apply for in the future once the design moved forward. And so the time has come around again. This funding application is due in May of this year, May 30th. And historically, there's been about $18 million available, and this is money only available for pedestrian and bicycle facilities. This year, they've expanded it about 4 times to $56.7 million, so it's quite a bit more money available. And so we have been encouraged by WashDOT, the people that are running this program, to put in an application. And so we're here today to ask if the board would like to move forward with that or not. There are no specific limits for the grant. $800,000 or less of an ask requires no match whatsoever. There's no match required if we go over $800,000. But you get additional points or consideration if you do provide a match, but we would not have to provide any kind of a match. And the intent for this project is to ask for grants and not have local funds helping fund this project. I think that's important to note. As I said, the eligible projects are only bicycle and pedestrian type projects. So this money unfortunately cannot be used for city streets or any kind of those projects, but.
Even though you might like that.
That's my other role, is helping the city strip streets. So I think that's about all that I had. I don't know if I'm missing anything.
Well, I guess one thing I would like to say is that, the port has never in our comp plan has somebody said, gosh, Port, you should build a pool. So what I do is follow what's in our comp plan and try to get done for the community. So it doesn't mean the port isn't in favor of the pool. I just have never had commissioners that said, let's try to build a pool. So this is what we are going after. And we, of course, support the other efforts in the community, but this is what we're working on. And we can use the funds that we use for design can be used as match for RCO, which is a really big deal. So that's what makes the RCO portion of this possible. And so in order to apply, we don't have to have a resolution to apply for DOT, but I certainly wouldn't apply without approval. And we do have to have a resolution to apply for RCO. So that is what is going to be put in front of the commissioners after questions and any other public comments, and so they can authorize us to apply. And Anderson Perry, the grant that we have right now, helps pay for their expertise to help us apply. We have talked to the city a little bit too about their portion because it fits their Main Street Safety Plan to see if they'd have any interest in partnering on it. But that's where we are, trying to get it started. Do you guys have anything else? Okay.
Do you have any
Questions?
No. I have one, 30%, that was done last April. It's still at 30% with some modifications, right?
Yeah, there is not a printed set of plans, but it's further than that, yes.
Okay. So is there an anticipation for a 60/90? I mean, I think October of 21, there was supposed to be an update on that. Did we get that update? Was that the part of the 30% or? That was my understanding anyways.
Yep. So there was a schedule that had 60/90 on there. Part of what's happened is we've gone, like I mentioned, we made a decision, or the steering committee made a decision to move the trail off of Commercial Street. So that was a step backwards to start going forwards again. So certain parts have progressed while certain went back to kind of progress again. So there has not been a printed set of 60% plans yet because we haven't got there in all the pieces of it so far.
But I could add that if we decided to move forward with like the city of Dayton portion, that goes along Highway 12, then they could finish the plans because we've made a decision on where it's going to be located. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, on the agenda then, we'll open it up one more time to discuss or to have comments on the trail specifically, anything that perhaps has been broached by our three experts here. Are there any comments? It'd have to be a comment. Oh, okay, so the commissioners will be asking the questions here to our experts.
Well, then I'll make a comment.
Yes.
My name is Peggy James. My husband and I have lived here over 30 years. We have definite opinions, which we probably have already been addressed, so we don't share that. But I don't understand why we can't at least have an advisory vote on this so that we know how the community feels. This is a great crowd, but it's not the whole community. And why can't, we at least get an opinion for you to work with from the whole community? So that we have, and it's the same thing with the pool. The commissioners haven't brought up the pool, but the community sure feels about it. So that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Want to wait? Okay.
All right, thank you, Peggy. For the record, the commissioners and I received a lot of written comments, and I would like to address all of those who submitted comments in favor of the trail. Becky Wilson, Ann Strode, Shelley McLeod, Robin Fitch, Michelle Smith, Carrie Dingman, Amy Rosenberg, Ross Edwards, George Gannon, Mara Trainer, Mike Burns, who is the Spokane Northeast Washington representative on the Non-Motorized Winter Recreational Advisory Committee. Norman Roth made a comment or commented supporting this. Amber Ingoglia she's from Jen Lingo, Brian Dohe, Tracy Clark, Mike McQuarrie, Patsy Compide, Mary Lennox, Robert Carlson, Lisa Naylor, Sylvia Bueller, J.L. Goldsmith, Brad McMasters, Erica Greenup, Ann Strode, Bruce and Heather Hebert, Joe Patrick from Waitsburg, Kathy Shockett, Terry Lawhead from Waitsburg, Paul Gregat from Waitsburg, Colonel David Womack from Walla Walla, Christy Andrews, Glenn and Sharon Mendel, Tom Kyo from Colfax, Tom Scribner from Walla Walla, Layla Booth from Waitsburg, a 13-year-old who submitted a comment to us, Tom Bergstrom from Walla Walla, Catherine Mendelson, John Zernacki from Walla Walla, Chris Takamura, Chris Howard from Walla Walla, Mark Shuck, Marlene Shuck, John and Sharon Eaton, Sue and Don Rittenhouse, Jerry Kaiser, Greg Nelson from Walla Walla, a member of the Walla Walla Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Vicki Zoller, Susan Glenn from Waitsburg, Kate Hockersmith from Waitsburg, Karen Thoney, or Kevin Thoney, sorry, Walla Walla.
Tony, not Thony, Tony.
TH.
Tony.
Tony, sorry. From Walla Walla, owner of the Bicycle Barn, Judy and Tom Bennett, the restaurant owners from Waitsburg, Greg and Linda Brown, who are active members of the Blue Mountain Land Trust Blues Cruise, Ted Bergstrom, Walla Walla, Heidi and Kyle McFarley, Walla Walla, Tim Parker, Craig Watson, Joe Roberts, and Tina Yotinen from Waitsburg, the new owners of the Royal Block, Mary Lou Scott Daggett from Walla Walla, who's the new Walla Walla concert promoter, Dave Shrek, Steve Shockett, Mary Lynn Gristle, Carol Anderson, Rodney Huffman from Walla Walla, Jeffrey Fritz from Walla Walla, Emily Brown, who is the Blue Zone Project public policy advocate, Candace Ball from Walla Walla, Katie Lee, Jerry Norquist, previous executive director of Cycle Oregon, Linda Herbert, who's the chair of the Blue Mountain Land Trust, Dr. Mike Luce, Arendra Cruz from Walla Walla, Ruth Lader Rudd from Walla Walla, and these people all were indicating, yes, we would come to and participate on the trail. Jenny Butler, Jean Warren wrote an email in opposition of this. Todd Vandenbark and Mary Campbell, Executive Director of Community Council. So we have over 70 people who commented to the commissioners and I. So I guess at this point, I would like the commissioners, well, I'd like to hear the facts that, wait.
I have a comment. It was nice to hear all the people from Walla Walla who wanted to have us back. You got 70 people who are supposedly for it. Like I said, I went from downtown Dayton, walked Highway 12, Huntsville, Lower Hogeye, all those side streets. I have over 434 signatures of people who don't want it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not sure why my name didn't get on it, because I did get a response from Seth and Johnny and Jeannie. Thank you for the letter I sent in. But I'm Joy Smith with the Waitsburg Commercial Club, and as president of the Waitsburg Commercial Club the last 7 years, and as one of the founding members of the stakeholders, Touchy Valley State Trail stakeholders, we put countless hours into this trail. And I have not negotiated a very good pay rate for myself. I do this on a volunteer basis. But I stood behind and with a lot of people on the Touchy Valley Trail Stakeholder Committee who donated a lot of time and hours and extended their time, took away time from their organizations and businesses. We believe in the trail. We believe in the economic benefits that the trail will bring to our communities. I have businesses in Waitsburg who are modifying and extending and adding to their business plan for the business that the trail will bring to them. And many of those people were listed on the letters that Jeannie was talking about. Yes, there are people from Walla Walla that also weighed in, and we encourage them to do that. And the reason we encourage them to do that is because it's been said, no one's coming to this trail. And so we asked people who would use this trail to please weigh in on it. And that's why you're hearing from people from outside of the community. But it also tells you that there are people who are using trails within their community, who are bicycling and doing these things. I personally managed an overnight rental, and I was amazed how many people came in with bicycles. And they were planning on taking those bicycles and going to Dayton, and they did that. They went down Highway 12 at their peril, but they did that. They bicycled in from Walla Walla. They did that. So we know that it will benefit our communities. And I invest my time because even though I don't get remuneration for it, I consider it pretty valuable. And I invest my time because I want to benefit my businesses. And I invest it when I see a return on investment. So please, commissioners, I encourage you to look at this with a good eye, to know that there are people out there who want this trail, to know that we don't believe that some of these problems are going to happen. Homelessness is another issue we need to address in another venue. That's a problem, but it's another forum. But thank you.
I'm Chuck Deere. The bottom line is we need, if it has to be a special election, the people of this county need to vote on it.
Commissioners.
Now it's your turn.
No.
I'd like to.
Wait.
Jeannie, it's Vicki Zoller. I have my hand up.
Vicki, if we could continue here, we're limited in time.
It's about the advisory vote. If people will reach out to their county commissioners can actually put advisory votes out for people to vote for. So if that's something you guys want to do, contact our county commissioners and make it happen.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. All right, commissioners. I'd like to hear the facts that have shaped your decision.
Well, I'll go ahead and go first. I'm going to ask that y'all bear with me a little bit. I've done an extensive amount of research on this subject, and I've prepared some statements, and I've also want to go over some of the grant materials and read a previous letter. I've got four main subjects I'm going to be talking about, and those topics are, I'm going to address the concerns of the trail. I'm going to talk about some of the benefits that people have wrote in support of the trail. And I'm going to talk about the grants. And the fourth thing, I'm just going to wrap things up with my conclusions. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get going on this. We'll start off with addressing some of the concerns that I've heard about the trail. The first one being maintenance. There's a big concern that the maintenance costs for this trail are going to be expensive, and that cost is going to fall on the taxpayers. We've been presented with annual cost estimates between $15,000 and $25,000 for maintenance of this trail. I believe those estimates are extremely low. We plan on having restrooms at the trailheads. These restrooms are going to have bi-weekly cleanings required. These restrooms are going to need to have the doors locked and unlocked, or we're going to have people camping in them, staying in them like we do in town, like we do at Waitsburg, like we do recently at Blue Mountain Station. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to get the doors locked. We're going to need to empty the garbage cans in the bathrooms. We're going to need to empty the garbage cans along the trail. We're going to need to remove graffiti when somebody sprays it all over the bathrooms or sticks needles in the toilet paper, whatever it is. There's going to be things that need to be taken care of. We've got the trash removal along the trail. How many trash cans are going to be along the trail? Who's going to empty them? How often are they going to be emptied? Who's going to pay the dump fees? We've got the issue with snow removal. Is that going to be something that's required? Are we just going to leave the snow and ice on there and hope people don't crash on their bicycles when they decide to take off from the campground or from Waitsburg? If we don't remove the snow, are we liable if somebody slips and falls and gets hurt? If we are supposed to remove the snow, who's going to do that and how much is it going to cost? These are some questions and concerns that I have about the maintenance. Well, these maintenance duties that we're talking about, the bathrooms and the garbages and all these things, who's going to do that? Is that going to require that we have a employee to do that? Because I don't see me going out there in my spare time and doing this on a volunteer basis. I don't see our currently limited port staff going out there and doing that. Is this something that we are going to need to hire a part-time employee? Because in a meeting I had with Jenny Dickinson, our part-time economic development person was costing us nearly $70,000 a year. So,
That was full-time, I'm sorry, that was full-time.
okay, so we'll cut that in half and just call it $35,000 a year for a part-time employee. I mean, when you get benefits, because this is government job, there are benefits that are with it. So there's expenses that haven't even been looked at. It's not just going to be $13 an hour, a couple hours a week for somebody to go there. That's not how it works. You have employee costs, and that hasn't been adequately addressed. I'm also concerned about flood damage and how that's going to be taken care of as far as maintenance issues from that. You know, water does a lot of damage. I've been in construction my entire life, and I've done a lot of flood damage repair, and I've seen roads, bridges, trails, trees, houses, you name it. Rivers take what they want, and the trail is not exempt from that. And to say that, oh, trails are durable and it's not likely the damage is going to happen, well, it's very likely the damage will happen. And then we're stuck with the big bill. If we don't repair it, we're on the hook for not fulfilling the terms of the grants. So where's that money going to come from? Are we going to wait for FEMA for several years to get it? Or are we just going to get more grants, more bonds, go in debt for it, ask for donations? I don't believe that that's been adequately addressed. So those are the maintenance issues that bring concerns up to me. Also, the issue of litter, the homeless population, and vandalism. I see a lot of people or hear a lot of people disregarding that as, oh, it won't happen here. I don't see the problem when I go on trails. I've been on trails. I've been on a lot of trails around this state. I've been approached by homeless people. I've had to walk around feces on the trail. I've had to step over needles. This is a problem that is a problem in our state. It's a problem that is it's a problem locally, Clarkston, Lewiston, regionally, Walla Walla has issues with it. It's something we're going to have to deal with. And it's a legitimate concern from many, many residents in our community. Well, and it's even evident around here. You know, we have the Lewis and Clark encampment out there. It's been vandalized a couple times, been spray painted. I personally clean spray paint off of the rocks out there. We've had people staying in the bathrooms at Caboose Park. We've had people vandalizing bathrooms at Waitsburg City Park. We've had people sleeping in the bathrooms at Blue Mountain Station. We have all sorts of problems with vagrants and this sort of activity happening in our local facilities around here. And to say that it's not going to happen, well, it's already happening. It's happening right before our eyes, and we're just turning a blind eye to it and saying, no, it's going to be better because this will be a nice trail, and nobody would dare do that on a nice trail. They will, guarantee it. Then there's the issue of property rights and right to farm and the farmers' rights. Many people have brought this up and said that the property is going to be going through, or the trail will be going through their property or right next to it. That agriculture is happening on the right of way now, and that won't be able to continue. And we hear that, oh, we just need to put up signs and notify people that we're going to spray. Well, who's going to put up those signs? Are the farmers going to get off their tractors when they're supposed to be harvesting or spraying or fertilizing and go put up signs? Who's going to pay for those signs? Is that going to be our part-time employee putting up signs whenever we got spraying? There's a lot of unanswered questions that just haven't even been talked about, haven't even been addressed. Well, and the other issue with that is this RCO grant that we're talking about. It requires that we maintain control and tenure over the entire project area for outdoor recreational purposes only forever. So what that means is the entire project area has to be designated for recreational purposes forever. So, you know, that brings up some questions, and I'll get into more details about that when I start talking about the grants. But, you know, that's a really concerning issue that we have to give up rights for this right of way for trail and recreational purposes. The other issue is the civil drawings. As I was looking through these, and I've looked at a lot of civil drawings over the years. We're claiming that we own the entire right of way, and it doesn't look like it from what I'm seeing. There's property ownership all up and down the right of way listed on the civil drawings. It says who owns the land to the north of the right of way, who owns the land to the south of the right of way. And there's property owners listed in the right of way. And the Port of Columbia does own the majority of it according to those civil drawings. But right around station number 8600 indicates Deborah L. Sweeney owns a large section of the right of way. Right around station 9100 indicates that Dan G. Bickelhaupt owns a large section of the right of way. And extending from station 35700 to 37600, it shows that Rowe Living Trust owns the right of way. That's 1900 feet just in that one there. So I'm not seeing in the pictures that I'm seeing here, and maybe that's something that'll get taken care of or hasn't been found out yet. Maybe I'm all wet, but what it says in black and white there to me is the port doesn't own the entire right of way. We have a right of way to use to operate a rail, and we own that right of way, but we don't own the land underneath of it. So that's something that I'm not convinced that we own the entire project area. And even outside of the right of way, there's areas in the city that we don't own. There's areas in Waitsburg that we don't own. And there's areas on Blue Mountain Station that are not part of that right of way. So that brings up some serious concerns about who actually owns the land that the right of way covers. Because owning a right of way is entirely different than owning real estate. Some sections, like I said, are on city property, both Dayton and Waitsburg. And this is the really interesting part. Now that we've changed the route, some of this trail is now on DOT right of way. So that brings in a whole nother can of worms that I'll get into in a little bit. The RCO grant, it prohibits non-recreational use over the entire project area forever. I know I already said that. The grant says it over and over and over. It's extremely important. It's extremely important that we don't ignore that. Agricultural use may continue for up to 3 years. Then it must cease forever. There will be no more farming up to the tracks. It's just not possible with a land and water conservation grant. Another issue, no funding and reimbursements will be paid until all non-recreational use is terminated. So we could build this thing, the farmers have a right to continue farming, and we don't see a dime for 3 years until all recreational use is stopped. So where are we going to get that money to pay for this up front? You know, we're talking millions of dollars that we just got to come up with and pay and hope that we get paid back for if we meet all the conditions. But those will be conditions I'll talk about when I get into the grants. Another concern is regarding public input and opinion about the entire project. So in order to hold the port accountable, I'm going to read a section of a Dayton Chronicle article from March 19th of 2020. Excuse me. March 19th, 2020, Dayton. The Port of Columbia joined in a discussion about the Touchy Valley Trail with some concerned community members during the meeting on March 11th. 2 requests had been made by concerned community members at February's meeting, including to 1, have the commissioners walk the trail to assess potential hazards and negative impact on property owners, and 2, consider an advisory vote for the public to have a say on whether the voting public supports pursuing the option of the trail along the railway between Dayton and Waitsburg. The board each told the group that they have walked the trail to varying degrees and are familiar with its path. Port Commissioner Earl Marvin stated, Anderson Perry and Associates, architects and engineers of Walla Walla, Washington, is currently under contract with the Port of Columbia to perform a preliminary engineering and conceptual design study of the Touchy Valley Trail between Dayton and Waitsburg. It is expected that this work currently being performed by Anderson Perry will be completed sometime in the fall of 2020. So I highlighted this next part. I would prefer to see this work being performed by Anderson Perry through to completion. At that point, the port should have enough answers to the many questions that have been raised concerning the trail that would allow it to hold a public hearing on whether or not to continue further with the development of the trail. It goes on a little bit further down. Commissioner Marvin continues to say that there are some things that are big enough that affect so many people that it does need to be on a ballot. So the previous commissioners said that, after we do this 30% drawing and get to this point, that we need to have a public hearing and listen to people and get opinions about this. I think a lot of the public's still waiting for that. He also mentioned that it should be put on an advisory ballot. I heard some excuses that, well, it's not our responsibility to do that and the county needs to do that. And it's just never been looked into further and it's never been done. So I don't believe that we've actually gotten a very accurate representation of what the community really wants for this. We haven't taken an advisory vote. We haven't had very many open public meetings about it. We kind of used COVID as an excuse to, oh, we can't have an open meeting now and we got to have meetings via Zoom, which excludes many people. So there's been, a certain degree of non-transparency in the progression of this, in my opinion. And I'm really not okay with that. I really believe that we need to be doing this project as openly and as honestly and as visibly and transparently as possible in front of everybody. And if it's not obvious that it is wanted and desired by the majority of the community, we need to drop it. I have no desire in continuing to chase after something that only a few of the population wants, no matter how loud they want to yell about it, if it doesn't benefit the community as a whole. So I'm still waiting to find out when this public hearing is and how we're going to proceed with that. As Jeannie Crow was mentioning earlier, we've received a lot of emails in support of this trail, and I don't want to diminish those. I've read every single one, and I've tried to reply to everybody. If I've missed you, I'm incredibly sorry. I hope I got all of you. But at my last count, we were over 60, but that was a couple of days ago. So I guess we're over 70 emails in support of this now. But on the flip side of that, similar to what Mr. Bellany was saying, I've also been presented with a petition with over 600 signatures of registered voters of Columbia County and Walla Walla or Walla Walla, Waitsburg area that are against this. So roughly 10% of the people that have voiced their opinion are for it out of the amount of signatures and comments and things that we have about it. So I don't see any other solution going forward with this without getting a more accurate view of what the public and the community really wants. Yeah, so that's pretty much takes care of the concerns part of it. So now that we got the difficult part out of the way, we'll talk about the benefits that people are voting about. And people are saying that this trail section is going to be part of the Blue Mountain Regional Trails Plan and how great that will be. But in the research I've been able to do, I haven't been able to find any current development stage trails that are in the process right now anywhere else in this Blue Mountain Regional Trails Plan. So ours is going to be the only one sticking out like a sore thumb between Dayton and Waitsburg with no connectivity to anything else of value. I'm not saying Dayton and Waitsburg aren't of value. I'm saying nothing else of value is connected to the trail. So without the connectivity, what's the benefit of it? Based on the input I've received, it seems like it's this dream for this great trails plan to go all over the area, but it's held by a minority and it's not really progressing or going forward. So to invest, $12-15 million in a 9.7 mile trail in the section that we're talking about, it seems to be a really big waste of energies, efforts, and the resources of the community. I think it would be underutilized, and I don't really see people driving to, a long distance to unload their vehicles to ride a bicycle 9.7 miles along a flat stretch through industrial areas and wheat fields. Maybe some will, maybe quite a few will. I don't see it as being enough to really create a large benefit. Then the safety issue of getting people riding their bicycles off the highway. Riding a bicycle on Highway 12 is not really a really safe or good idea in my opinion. So having an alternate route to get between Dayton and Waitsburg on a bicycle would be great. So if anybody wants to go by the chamber office, they have bike maps there that have bike routes between Dayton and Waitsburg. You should have them too, Joy. If you're not, you can probably get them from our chamber. But there's designated bike routes all over this county. There's hundreds of miles of trails on this bike map that will take you pretty much wherever you want to go. You don't have to ride on Highway 12. There's no need. I've been the other way. It's a beautiful drive between Waitsburg and Dayton on Highway 12. Not so much a beautiful drive. I don't see the benefit of putting the trail there along that path, especially when we have alternate routes to get between the two areas now. And as far as road bikers, I've talked to quite a few different road bikers since this project began its conception several years ago. And road bikers are in it for transportation. They're getting from point A to point B, and they want the most direct, shortest path possible. And they've told me they're not going to use the bike trail. They're going to stay on the highway because it's the fastest. And they're allowed to be there, so that's what they're going to do. So, you know, it's still going to Highway 12 is still going to get used by many people. We do have an alternate route. So that pretty much takes care of the safety concerns. Well, there's the concern that Columbia County lacks trails and outdoor recreation opportunities, and the Tucci Valley Trail would fill that gap. Another website that I went on to said that Columbia County has over 200 miles of trails, not roads, trails. So we have trails. They just happen to be where our recreation is, around the mountains, around the rivers, not through industrial areas and farmland. There's just very little attraction along the proposed trail route. So not having the connectivity to the mountains to link to that, it doesn't show a lot of draw. Then there's opportunities for exercise and healthy living. Yes, we all need that. In our location here with over 200 miles of trails, 2 rivers, the Blue Mountains, there's plenty of opportunities for exercise and healthy living. If a person can't find something to do to keep active and stay healthy around here, that person's doing something wrong, because we have tons of opportunities for exercise, outdoor recreation, healthy living, you name it, we got it. Then the economic development aspect. This trail doesn't create living wage jobs. It just doesn't. There's, you know, possible food service jobs or convenience stores or maybe a bicycle shop or, you know, a few jobs. But even in the economic indicators that we were given in the presentation, the jobs that it's talking about doing are between $25,000 and $35,000. So they're down in the poverty level. So we're not talking about this is going to be this great boon that's going to create all these jobs for all these people for a 9.7 mile trail. So yeah, I believe those economic benefit or estimates, I think they're way overstated. I think it's extremely optimistic considering that the proposed location and the available amenities that we have in Dayton and Waitsburg. I just don't see how it's going to bring all this money. For one, I don't see how people are going to come and use it that frequently from out of the area. So that pretty much takes up the first 2 sections. So that talks about the benefits and the concerns. But what I really want to get into is the nitty gritty of these grants. After our last workshop, I had sent Ms. Dickinson an email requesting that she send me the grants so I had time to look them over, which she graciously did, and I'm very appreciative of that. Shortly after, received another email, said we're switching from one RCO grant to a different one that seems to fit our needs better. So after reading the first RCO grant, I decided to read the second one, and I'm glad that I did. But I'll talk about the DOT grant first. Bear with me a second as I pull it up. Okay, so as it's already been mentioned, match is not required for this. Which is really good because we were talking about using this grant as the match for the RCO grant. But while match is not required, it is recommended and will be considered for a request over $800,000. So our chances of actually being awarded this grant go up significantly if we can provide some match. The funds will be available for the 2023 through 2025 biennium beginning July 2023. This is not a cash upfront program. Costs incurred prior to Washington State Department of Transportation project approval are not eligible for reimbursement. So this is basically we pay for things and we get reimbursed as needed from the Department of Transportation. Look at my notes here. So reading through this grant, it says there's some special instructions for projects on a state route or within Washington State DOT right of way. Now, previously, when we were talking about this project, we weren't on the Department of Transportation right of way or Highway 12 or Main Street, whichever you choose to call it. We were over on Commercial Street. That opens up a new can of worms, and I don't know if we're prepared for it or not, but from everything I've heard so far, it doesn't sound like we're totally prepared. It says here, local agencies and tribes that have prioritized a location for a proposed project that is on or adjacent to a state route, crosses a state route, or is within Washington State DOT right-of-way must follow these special instructions for their applications. Projects on state routes shall have already undergone Washington State DOT practical solutions evaluations and have full Washington State Department of Transportation regional support. So this has to be done prior to us being to the stage where we're at right now, asking them for money. They must be coordinated through the appropriate Washington State Department of Regional Office. The project schedule should be given additional time to accommodate Washington State Department of Transportation collaboration. An email or letter confirming project concurrence by the regional administrator or their designer or designee is required. Contact your area's regional local programs engineer to start this process. It's a little late to start that process. That should have been done. If it's not done, that should have been done prior. But it wouldn't have needed to be done because we weren't going to be on the DOT right of way. Next page of my notes. We're getting there. So we already talked about that this is a development project. The current stage at this point, we've gotten past the 30% design stage. Next expectation for this grant is to get the project to 90% design, shovel ready, begin construction kind of a deal. So we've kind of talked in the past that, we'd like to go through the process of the feasibility study and make sure everything is going to, be on par and feasible and within the scope of what we want to do. And that before we would begin construction, we would actually have a meeting about that. But here we are, this grant is for construction, not just for design. We've already done that. So it seems like we're charging ahead into this without fully getting the feel of what the community wants. The review criteria for this DOT grant, it prioritizes projects with planned community engagement events. So I don't know of any planned community engagement events that we have scheduled up at this point, but we'd have to start getting some public input if we're going to really have a chance at this. A large number of preliminary engineering elements necessary to advance the 90% design should already be done. So that's just a couple of the concerns about the DOT grant. Another stipulation here. Washington State Department of Transportation projects that receive federal funding are required to be on the State Transportation Improvement Plan. So I went to the State Transportation Improvement Plan and I searched and I searched and I scrolled and I looked and I entered every search parameter I could for anything having to do with Columbia County, Dayton, Touchy Valley, anything like that. And the Touchy Valley Trail is nowhere to be found on the State Transportation Improvement Plan. And this RCO grant is all federal money. So if we're going to receive federal money, we've got to be on this plan. This plan is done every 4 years. We are currently in the 2022 through 2025 Transportation Improvement Plan. The next one begins 2026. So I don't see that we're very well prepared to be going after this DOT grant at this time. So that's that grant. That's all I have really about the DOT one. Those are my two big concerns is the Washington State Department of Transportation right-of-way and the STIP plan, the Transportation Improvement Plan. So now I'm going to talk about the RCO grant. And this is a doozy. This is a big one. This was a lot of reading, a lot of information. Like I said, we were originally going to be going for a different grant than the LWCF Land and Water Conservation Fund. We were going to be going for a grant, I believe, under the Recreational Trails Program. The Recreational Trails Program grant cap was $1 million. This was $2 million. When asked why we were switching grants, or what the difference between the two grants, Jenny Dickinson said the difference is the amount of money that we can apply for is 2 million instead of 1 million. So we're no longer applying for the Regional Trails Program grant that we had talked about previously. We are now going for the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. The significance of that I'll get to in a little bit, but it's probably likely we wouldn't have qualified for the Regional Trails Program grant anyway. There was some stipulations in it. One of them had to be roadway separation from the trail and roads. There had to be a specific kind of buffer. We were actually using the road for the trail for part of it, so that was kind of incompatible. It's also required that the trail be connected to other trail system, which obviously the trail between Dayton and Waitsburg is not connected to any other trail system. So that was a requirement of the Regional Trails Program. And there was also issues with the proposed location on Highway 12 would have created a problem for that. So it made sense to switch it to the Water Conservation Fund grant. So in reading through that grant, applying for, obtaining, and managing an LWCF grant requires the highest level of preparation from the applicant and the highest level of due diligence from a successful grant sponsor. No matter the amount of money or relative share the LWCF funds in a given project, LWCF rules apply to the entire funded project forever. That's right in the beginning of the grant. So that was a huge red flag to me that I figured needed some further investigation. It goes on to say that money from the LWCF come from several federal funding sources, leases of offshore oil and gas resources, recreational fees, sale of surplus real property, and motorboat fuel taxes, to name a few. So that's where the money comes from. It's given to the state program through the federal government. These funds, the National Park Service within the U.S. Department of the Interior manages this federal grant program. The National Park Service ultimately receives and approves all project applications, agreements, and amendments. So while we're applying through the state, it's actually managed by the Department of Interior and the National Park Service. Scrolling down to my next highlight, they asked that the project be completed quickly. This grant is for building the trail. It's not for design further. It's not for getting to 90%. This is a requirement that this trail must be built in a timely manner, and certain stages must happen if we apply for and receive this grant. The development projects, they say 2 to 2.5 years. So that doesn't give us a lot of time to come up with another, I don't know, $10, $12 million to finish the trail. And I don't know how many grants are going to be coming available in the next 2 to 2.5 years. Getting into the grant policies. A lot of policies on this, and I'll just go into the important ones. It says we will be entering into a grant agreement that requires the provision of replacement land if there is a conversion or if the outstanding rights, that's an important little word there, outstanding rights or revisionary interests are exercised in such a manner that results in conversion. We'll talk about conversion a little bit, but basically what we're talking about, conversion is use of the facility or the project by any other use other than recreation would be considered conversion. So I'm hoping you guys are starting to understand where some of the concerns are coming from with me in this grant and the requirements for these receiving these funds. It talks about development projects are those that result in the construction of or work resulting in new elements, including but not limited to structures, facilities, materials to enhance outdoor recreation resources. There's a perpetual obligation for all development projects on land owned by the applicant or by a public agency. So we have to follow these requirements and rules perpetually forever, which it talks about over and over in here. So with development projects, developing and renovating active and passive public outdoor recreation and access facilities is the purpose of these grants. Additional guidelines for development projects are in Manual 4. That was a fun one to read also, but I didn't go into that now. But potential projects that this grant can be used for, and I'm going to go through this list. It can be used for athletic fields, campgrounds, including overnight recreation facility structures, community gardens, equestrian facilities such as rodeo arenas, golf courses, hard court areas such as skate parks, tennis courts, and basketball courts, marine facilities, motorized and non-motorized boating, water access, etc., natural areas, open spaces, outdoor interpreted facilities, including kiosks and signs, picnic sites, including picnic shelters, playgrounds and spray grounds, pump tracks, shooting and archery ranges, ski areas, ice skating rinks, snowmobile facilities, swim beaches and pools, support facilities such as parking, restroom, permanent spectator seating, storage, landscaping, utilities, unless they exclusively serve ineligible facilities, trails, including interpretive and pathways, vistas and viewpoints, and wildlife management areas for fishing or hunting. So there's a whole list of different projects that these funds can be used for, trails included. The DOT grant, yes, it can only be used for trails, but there's a litany of things that these funds could be used for. Not that they are all in our wheelhouse or what the port should be dealing with, but to say that these funds are only available for trails and they can't be used for anything else in our community is simply not true. It's only applicable to the DOT grant. So now I'm going to get into talking about the control of the land for development projects. So what I'd like to read to you, to protect investments made by the Recreation and Conservation Funding Board and to assure public access to those investments, sponsors must have adequate control of project sites to construct, operate, and maintain the areas for the term required by the grant program and the grant agreement. This control and tenure may be through land ownership, a lease, or an easement. Project sponsors may develop facilities on land they own or on land where they have less than fee interests, such as easements. If their right to the land provides permanent public access and control of the property commensurate with the proposed development, and the land can be placed under LWCF protection. All less than fee interests must be described in the application and revisions form described below and indicated on the draft LWCF boundary map required in this application. So I don't know that the port has authority to put other people's property under LWCF rules forever, namely the city's property or Smith Hollow Farm Schoolhouse or Blue Mountain Station or the city park in Waitsburg. I don't know that we really even have the easements established yet to put a trail on these properties. Not to mention the properties that I talked about earlier that are within the right of way that appear to be owned by others than the port. So we don't seem to have control of the land that we're trying to put this trail on anyways in its entirety. We have control of some of it, but we don't seem to have control over large portions of it. And that presents big problems for potential legal issues when we start trying to do things with other people's property. And I don't really want somebody coming after me and saying, hey, you agreed to do this, so why are you wanting to put this on land that does not belong to you? So that's concerning, that we don't have control of the land. We have control of some of it, but not all of it. Public property records. All funded sites, regardless of the grant amount, must be maintained for outdoor recreation purposes forever. The National Park Service requires that the project sponsor keep a permanent record in his property records that notes that the site was acquired or developed with LWCF assistance and cannot be converted to other than public outdoor recreation use within the written approval of the Secretary of the Interior. The permanent record must include the recorded notice of grant and a signed and dated project boundary map that documents the area subject to the grant agreement. In general, LWCF protection is applied to the entire recreation area, such as the entire park, or in this case, the entire railroad right-of-way, or the entire project area, unless the RCO and the National Park Service agree to a more limited area. Project sponsors must agree to this requirement as a condition of receiving a grant. Prospective applicants should carefully consider their ability and willingness to comply with this provision to the LWCF Act before applying for the grant. Well, right now, I'm carefully considering that, and I don't think it's a very good idea for us to be permanently giving this property over to nothing but recreational use for the rest of everybody's life, including the community. So we need to keep public records saying where we got the money, how it's used, and how it will be used. It goes on to talk about protection of federal investments and the ongoing stewardship requirements. An RCO grant comes with long-term obligations to maintain and protect the project area. After a project is complete, it has this in bold now, and I did not do this, they did. All real property acquired, developed, or renovated using LWCF grants must be retained for public outdoor recreational use forever. See, they talk about this over and over and over throughout this grant. So they really want to drive that fact home, you know. I think if they're going to say it over and over, I'm going to pay attention to it. The long-term obligations for the LWCF are in federal laws, in RCO's grant agreement. A sample grant agreement may be found on the RCO's website. The Land and Water Conservation Act contains provisions to protect federal investments and the quality of resources funded by grants. The law recognizes that changes in land use or development may make some grant-assisted areas obsolete over time, particularly in rapidly changing cities. At the same time, the law discourages casual discards of park and recreational facilities by ensuring that changes or conversions from recreation use will bear a cost that assures taxpayers that investments in the natural recreation estate will not be squandered. Land and Water Conservation Act contains a clear provision to protect grant-assisted areas from conversion. No property acquired or developed with the assistance under this section shall, without the approval of the Secretary, be converted to other than public outdoor recreation uses. The Secretary shall approve such conversions only if he finds it to be in accord with the then existing comprehensive statewide outdoor recreation plan, and only upon such conditions as deems necessary to assure the substitution of other recreational properties of at least equal fair market value and of reasonable equivalent usefulness and location. This requirement applies to all parks and other sites that have received LWCF grants of any type, whether for acquisition, development, or renovation of facilities. In many cases, even a small grant, for example, for development of a picnic shelter in a park of hundreds or thousands of acres, provides protection against conversion for the entire park. When an organization wants to convert land to another use, it must replace the land with other land that is in accord with the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. It is of at least current fair market value and is of reasonable equivalent usefulness and location. So if we do develop this railroad right away for other than recreational purposes, for example, to put any new railroad facilities, a grain elevator, a transfer yard, any other kind of railroad related opportunities that might come up, that's considered conversion. That is converting from a portion of that project area from recreational use to another use. And it's strictly forbidden if we apply for these funds. And if we do that, we got to give them new land somewhere else. We don't have a lot of spare land to be given away. So that's very concerning when I read that we'd have to replace that land if we were to do any other uses with it. I talked a little bit earlier that they require a boundary map. One of the most important attachments to the project application in the Land and Water Conservation Fund project is the boundary map. This map shows the park area to be covered by the LWCF anti-conversion protections. The project boundary normally is the boundary of the entire park or other site within which the project within which the funded project area is located that is to be acquired or developed. The project boundary should clearly delineate the area to be included under the conversion provisions of the LWCF Act. All land within the project boundary must be dedicated in perpetuity to public outdoor recreation. At a minimum, this area must be a viable public outdoor recreation area that is capable of being self-sustaining without reliance on other areas not identified in the scope of this project. Any change of the land within the boundary for use other than public outdoor recreation will require replacement of the converted land. If land or facilities are excluded, the grant application must state the reason for the exclusion on the map submitted with the grant application. Typical reasons to exclude an area would include an existing or proposed community center within the park, or lease of land to a nonprofit organization such as the Boy Scouts in a large wilderness type park. Exclusions require approval from the Recreation and Conservation Funding Board and the National Park Service before the applicant submits an application. Boy Scout activities and community centers aren't the same as railroads. So getting an exclusion for operating an active railroad, pretty slim. Got to scroll through this and get to my next highlight. Bear with me. So it goes on to post-completion requirement. No matter the funding level or relative share of LWCF funds in a project, LWCF rules and processes will apply to the entire funded project in perpetuity. It says again, non-recreational uses. So here's where it talks about different activities. Non-recreational uses such as timber management, grazing, and other natural resource uses, not including agriculture, it says. So non-recreational uses such as timber management, grazing, and other natural resources may be allowed on the land if they meet the following criteria. They are described clearly in the project application, which of course we could describe it. Number 2, are compatible with and secondary to outdoor recreation. A railroad is not compatible with land and water conservation. The railroad is not secondary to this trail. So that tells you right there. And they have to be approved by the National Park Service and the RCO director. Non-recreational uses such as agriculture occurring on the property at the time of acquisition may continue for up to 3 years, contingent on approval by the Recreation and Conservation Funding Board and the National Park Service. A project sponsor will not receive reimbursement on the project until the non-recreational use is terminated. So I mentioned that earlier, but there it is in black and white right there in their manual. Changing the use of the property. The Land and Water Conservation Fund Act requires that all property acquired or developed with the LWCF funds be dedicated in perpetuity exclusively to public outdoor recreation use. The law further states that no property can be converted to a different use without the approval of the Secretary of Interior. This law affects lands within the project boundary as shown on maps submitted within the grant application and normally is the boundary of the park that is to be acquired or developed. When an organization wants to convert land to another use, it must replace the land with other land that is in accord with the current Washington State Recreation and Conservation Plan of at least current fair market value and of reasonable equivalent usefulness and location. Conversions generally occur when the following happens. And one of those things is, it says non-recreational use, public or private, are made of the project area or a portion of it. So any non-recreational use that we do or allow or that happens on that railroad right of way is going to be considered a conversion of the project and we have to replace land. I don't know that our taxpayers really want to do that. And the other thing I wanted to talk about in here, I must have skipped by it, but I'll find it here in a second. Bear with me, is the phased projects portion of this. I'm having trouble finding it now, but I'll just go off of my memory. Basically, in talking about using these monies for phased projects, each phase needs to be able to stand on its own merit as a complete and total recreation experience. And this entire trail between Wayton and Datesburg barely stands on its own merits as a complete and total recreational experience. A small section going between 2 points of this is going to have a hard time, in my opinion, meeting the qualification of standing on its own merits as a complete recreational experience. I don't see that. So that's what it has to say about phase projects. So I don't know that we can even get by with that. So that covers that grant and my big concerns about it. So basically the takeaway from that is we've got a rail operator that is operating a viable business on our railroad right of way. And he's transporting goods and products, on here and providing jobs to people. And if we were to accept these land and water conservation funds, then simply he wouldn't be able to continue doing that. Railroads and conservation don't mix. And that's really concerning that we would put something on the table that is going to, significantly reduce what we can do with that right of way. I'm going to wrap things up here from what I have to say. And I appreciate you all being patient with me and listening to it, but it's important stuff, and it's important stuff that we all need to know about and have a good idea about what we're really voting on here, because otherwise we don't know. So the Port's mission is to maximize public resources and private investment to create jobs, provide infrastructure, and maintain and improve economic vitality of Columbia County and its communities. This RCO grant does not maximize the public resources. It does not maximize this right of way. It does not maximize anything. It minimizes it. It takes this viable right of way and turns it into a trail going between 2 points, and it essentially puts the rail operator out of business. The other valuable resources that this grant would jeopardize, not only the railroad, but the Waitsburg City Park, Blue Mountain Station, Smith Hollow Schoolhouse, Caboose Park, and the depot, because they're all within the project boundary areas. Economic development estimates are extremely exaggerated and and I just don't see it. We're not going to get enough money off of the people using this trail to offset the amount of money that we have going out for it. This trail has got to bring in enough money in direct tax revenue to pay for the maintenance and repairs that it's going to need, and I don't see that happening. As far as the maintenance, the estimates on the maintenance costs are extremely low. There's going to be a lot of work that's going to have to be done to this trail over the years. It might be low for the first couple of years and until things start happening, but they're going to go up, and there are going to be significant costs with this. So we're going to have to find out where we're going to get the money. And up to this point, there's been a great lack of transparency and an extremely limited amount of public input about this trail. If this project is to continue in any fashion at all, it's going to have to be done in a much more open fashion, and it's going to have to be done with the support of the majority of the community. And so far, I haven't seen the support of the majority of the community. I believe these proposed grants are inappropriate for this project, and they're potentially very risky. They could open us up for some severe legal challenges. And I am in no way, absolutely no way, willing to sacrifice our railroad or run our rail operator off for a lousy trail. It's just not going to happen. And if there's anything I can ever do about it, I will not let it happen on my watch. This railroad is a vital asset to our community. This is not a rails to trails program. And we're not going to get rid of the railroad and throw the baby out with the bathwater just so we can have a trail. The port cannot guarantee control and tenure over the entire project area. We don't own the entire project area, so how can we? We don't even have easement set up yet. And land and water conservation projects are incompatible with highways. They're incompatible with city streets. They're incompatible with sidewalks, roadways, industry, and commercial agriculture. This is not a conservation issue that we're trying to put between Dayton and Waitsburg. We're trying to put a trail. This grant's for conservation issues, and it's not compatible with the things that we have going on that right of way. So I'm sure you're all tired of listening to me. Get over it. I'm done.
I have a suggestion.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that. If you could please hold your comment. Johnny, if you could continue, please.
Seth covered a lot, and I kind of made some marks to try to take it out of some conversations that I had so you didn't have to hear it again, but there's a lot of agreements there. When I ran for this position and was elected for this position, one of the reasons was because I didn't think the community was being heard. I didn't have the handshake of commissioners coming to my house and saying, hey, this is what we're proposing to do. I didn't even see a letter at my house, for that matter, if it did go out. And I'm kind of old school, and I want somebody to come to my house and come to my porch and say, hey, we want to put a trail adjacent to your property. I did that. When I went out and campaigned, I did that very thing. And I talked to thousands of people across this area. And a large part were concerned about the trail. Some no's, some yeses, lots of concern for that. And I'm like, how did that happen if we're being heard? Some of them wouldn't speak up because of retribution, honestly, and that's what I was told. I don't know if I'm starting to believe that with some things, which is unfortunate in a governance body. And that is not a direction that I think we need to be as a community, absolutely. And that's what I felt when I was out there in certain pockets. I think we need to come together for sure. The people that were living out in the country wanted a sidewalk, they'd move to town. So that's what I hear a lot. You go through 2 rivers, 2 bridges, grain silos, 3 or 4, 5, 6 crossing the tracks with it as I see it. I'm in the same thing, and I'm not against trails and I'm not against exercise. And I would love to see trails in the mountains and going around lakes and rivers and streams. But there's a lot of people that live through that area. You got some commercial areas, you got farmers. And I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the world today. But with recession, we got Ukraine, Russia, we need all the grain we can get. So I don't want to take 1 inch of that farmland for that very reason. 10, 15, 20 years ago, when we started putting in trails and started these processes, we were in a different time. Unfortunately, we were in a different time. Hopefully we get back to what I felt like when I was a kid coming up, but it is a different time today. It's a different time than it was 3 or 4 years ago with what we've gone through the last couple of years. That same Mr. Poole that wrote that article in Clarkston was the same Mr. Poole that 2018 was applauding that same very build on the Clarkston Trail out there. And unfortunately, 2 years later, that's where we're at because he did not know that that's what was going to happen also. They didn't think it was going to happen there. 2 years later, he's writing the same article, but in a whole different fashion. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. I surely don't, but I am not willing to risk it at this point from what I've seen. I just am not. And my name's on that. I ran on that. I want to talk to people, and I don't see it there. Yeah, there's some loud voices out there that want to write it, and I applaud that. I applaud the energy put into it. I applaud the outfit in front of us right here to put all the energy into it. The commissioners before us, whether it was misguided or not, that's a whole nother topic, but they put the energy into it. So I don't want to disperse that at all. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I am not comfortable moving this project forward for a multiple reasons, and I'm not going to reiterate a whole bunch. We've heard a lot from the community and from the commissioners up here, and I'll turn it over to Jeannie. Thank you.
Seth, I have to commend you for all of your research. I don't have the time to look at everything that you commented on. I guess I expect our experts, you know, the manager of the port, the experts here, the engineers who have done the legal surveys and have determined that everything is acceptable from what they have, from the information that they have. If there is any documentation that the 3 people whose property you indicated is on the right of way, if those people would contact our consultants, then that needs to be done. But to this point, the experts have already taken a look at all of the right of ways and everything is acceptable. We wouldn't have had a recommendation by some of these granting organizations to say, put your application in. They have read, well, obviously you have read something different than what they have indicated, but they claim that we would be eligible, perhaps. I mean, obviously funding issues is another issue, but they feel that we would meet the qualifications for requesting those funds. And Seth, you talked about the rails to trails. This is not a rails to trail. This is a rails with trails. Those are completely different. There is a rails with trail from Prosser to Sunnyside. It starts, obviously, you know, you have your trailheads. It is adjacent to an existing and a workable or functioning railroad. Yes, there are, you know, it veers a little ways from the existing rail, but in certain places, there's a fence that protects, you know, the safety of the riders, the walkers. But this is a rails with trail, not a rails to trails. In 2016, I cycled from Los Angeles to Seattle, riding mainly back roads, some highways and a couple trails. Anecdotally, because it's only my experience that I can talk about, I can confirm that highways are extremely dangerous. I was on some roads that had no fog line. I was 6 inches from a cliff and there was a truck behind me. And, I had to move into the lane because I was not going to get close to that ledge. So it's extremely dangerous. I have biked the Centennial Trail. I have never seen an issue when I cycled the Centennial Trail that has been addressed as far as vagrancy, trashiness, loitering along any of the trails. But those were my experiences. These are all anecdotal experiences that are talked about. I never once noticed any homeless people along the trails. Once again, my experiences only. On one occasion, we cycled adjacent to some ag land. We had no problems when we traveled that, when my daughter and I traveled that, we had no issues. About the time that we returned from our LA to Seattle bike trip, the Blue Mountain Regions Trails project was in the planning phase. I've heard people say that they didn't get a chance to voice their concerns about this trail in its infancy. Well, these meetings were publicized in Waitsburg, in Walla Walla, in Dayton. We had a lot of people come and say, this is what we want. They put little stickers on, the project that they wanted. These public meetings gave, the port and, so many people the thought that, yes, this needs to be included in our comp plan, which it ultimately did get in our comp plan. Further, I've heard it said that this is solely a port supported project. As the port has indicated, the fact is well documented that the project is supported and was included in the city, county, and Port Cooperative Parks Master Plan, the City of Dayton Comprehensive Plan, the City of Waitsburg Comprehensive Plan, the Columbia County Comp Plan, the Port of Columbia Comp Plan. The grant proposals that were received for the design funds included support letters from the Board of Commissioners from Columbia County and from Walla Walla County, the cities of Dayton and Waitsburg, the Palouse Regional Transportation Planning Organization, the Walla Walla Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization, Waitsburg Commercial Club, the Washington State Department of Transportation Regional Planning Organization, Community Council of Walla Walla. I've heard many people concerned that this project will increase our community's taxes, and you're concerned about who is going to pay for the maintenance expenses that you feel are, not as high as are going to exceed the amount that was proposed. We had taken a look, or I should say one of our steering committee members reviewed the maintenance costs of trails, and that was his best guess. Whether it's accurate or not, we'll never know until the trail is completed. But once again, the port will not increase taxes for anyone in the community. That has to be voted on by a vote on an election, and the port cannot impose a tax increase on its own. I've heard concerns that the project would take private property. Once again, our experts have already confirmed that to the best of their information. The title search has shown that the proposed trail is being built all within the railroad right-of-way. And again, like you mentioned, Columbia Rail is supportive of this proposed project. You would think that if they had any inkling of concerns about conversion and issues that you bring up, they would want to know, because I don't want that railroad to go away either. I want it to be existing, but I want it to be a rail with trail. Again, we hear that there will be little or no impact on benefits to our communities. We did, the commissioners and I received the 2021 Recreational Trails Program Annual Report. And this is by the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and the Economic, Environment, and Social Benefits of Recreational Trails. That's the RCO, the Recreation and Conservation Office. These are the experts that I rely on for the information because I can't do the research that you have. In their report, they indicate that trails increase tax revenues in the communities in which they're located by trails boosting spending at local restaurants. I know when my husband and I go to trails, because we don't have any here, we will stop at the gas station, we'll get some lunch, we might do some shopping. So that is how the infusion of, that's how the vitality of the communities are increased. Trails reduce medical costs by encouraging exercise and healthy outdoor activities. Yes, there are trails up in the mountains that they can go to, but I like to get on my bike. I like to get outside. I like to ride. Yes, I'm biased. Trails increase the value of nearby properties. Trails provide transportation options and cut fuel expenses. And ultimately, these benefits represent a huge economic return on the money invested in trail projects. This report claims the costs of trail construction and maintenance are far outweighed by the economic benefits generated by trails. That's what they're claiming. So finally, the trail meets the port's strategic goals of creating recreational projects that improve the economic vitality of Columbia County. It meets the port's economic development goal of supporting tourism and recreation by encouraging the number of visitors to our county. The trail would also meet the port's transportation goals of supporting regional active transportation planning, for example, walking, biking, and water trails. Based on the facts that this trail project is within the port's authority to pursue by meeting several of the port's goals, I support the trail. I think that's it.
Well, well, at this point, I wish that so many of the questions that have been brought up had been asked of the consultants when they were asked, when they finished their presentation, or of me. There is a lot of information here that we do have the answers to, that I don't know if it's worth it at this point to go through them. Restrooms, we're not going to build another new restroom at Blue Mountain Station or at the depot. There was only going to be one at the state park, and we've been talking to state parks about helping take care of it. The snow removal, we talked to other trails. They don't remove snow in the winter. The people just don't ride on the trails in the winter. The liability, it would be the same as it is with the Rock Hill Trail. There's an RCW that limits the liability of a government when they offer their property for recreation. The grants, I mean, there's not a lot of things that Anderson Perry could answer about both of them. It was RCO that recommended the one that I had emailed out. There's just, I mean, the list is very long of things that were not shared accurately. And one other thing I would like to say is that I've been managing grants in this county for over 20 years. And I am sad to think that anyone would think that I would propose something that was going to hurt our port or our town, because it's not, that would be unprofessional of me to do. So I don't know if they want to have any questions answered, if any of you do or not, or.
I would like to call the question.
Go ahead, there's your answer. Go ahead.
I'm calling the question, to you.
That means but no one's made a motion.
Yes, well, that's what I was going to say. So we can take action on the two resolutions. Would either of you wish to make a motion on action to take on these two proposals?
So I would move that we deny resolution 2022-01.
I second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to deny the application to the RCO resolution 2022-01. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Second,
I would also like to make a resolution that we deny, or I would like to make a motion that we deny resolution number 2022-02.
I second that.
okay, we've got a motion and a second to deny resolution 2022-02 application to WASDOT. All in favor of the denial? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, at this point then, Peggy, you brought up the issue about an advisory vote. First of all, Jenny, can you talk to the possibility of an advisory vote?
When it was brought up before, I called both the state auditor and the local auditor, and there is no legislative mechanism that allows a port to put something on the ballot as an advisory vote. So that was the answer I gave the commissioners at the time.
We don't have the authority, but we can request it.
Please, hold on. The city can do it and the county can do it. The port does not have a legislative that I was able to find.
Right.
So we go to our county.
The port can go to the county commissioners to request that, and they can put it on their agenda and vote on whether they will do it or not. It's that simple. It's the denial of that opportunity has really stuck in the craw of many in the community, and it's really not settling well with me either, that we haven't really given much effort into really polling the members of our community into what they really want. And so I would also like to move that we take no further action pursuing funding of this trail until we have gained a clear and obvious majority opinion that the community is for the trail.
So
Second that.
so my question to you both, if we find a mechanism to have an advisory vote, and if a majority of the vote is in agreement to that they want the trail, would you abide by that?
I would imagine we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, I would cross that bridge when we get there, but a lot of that's going, that's a loaded question, because a lot of it's going to depend on the sources of funding that we're going for. You see, not all RCO grants are the same.
I agree.
The problem with this one is it's a conservation grant, and that creates problems with the railroad, so.
Yes, but if the majority of the voters say, yes, we want the trail, could we pursue this in 2 years from now?
I suppose that we'd have to, if we get an advisory vote that the voters want the trail, then I guess we're going to have to put it up to the voters if the voters are willing to pay for it.
Well, they would come from the grants.
Well, some of it would come from the grant, but we're talking about $12 million+ for a trail, and we're only a couple $1 million into it.
One other comment that you had made and again, we're still back to the discussion on all of this, which we should have had before. You talked about the segments not being eligible on their own. I have seen trails in Seattle. They did a mile here. Later on in a couple of years, they came back and did another. So somehow they're doing them in segments. They're not doing them all at once. And they're considering.
There's lots of different funding opportunities out there, but there's different rules for every single opportunity. I'm speaking very specifically to this very specific grant.
All right. So if there is a way to contact, I don't know how we proceed then with this, whether it's our responsibility to.
I'm certainly they would want us to pay for it.
It would cost us less to pay for an advisory vote than it would cost us for 1 year of maintenance on the trail.
Okay, so let us proceed that way. I would be agreeable to looking into contacting the county commissioners or.
I think we need to take care of the motion that we already have on the table before we start additional
And
action.
seconded it.
What was the motion again, please?
I move that we take no further action pursuing funding for opportunities for this trail until we have had a clearer picture of what the community really wants by an advisory vote.
Oh, okay, very good. Okay,
I already seconded it once.
all right. Well, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passed. All right, well, that was exciting. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around.
Good section.
Wait a second, okay. So
Time out.
Hold on, everyone.
Hold on. This is still a meeting?
This is still a meeting. We are continuing with our meeting. We've got broadband and housing to discuss, and we've got executive session. So you're welcome to leave now that the trail is over. Thank you very much for your presentations, both of you. Right.
I need to.
We're going to take a 5-minute break. 5-minute break.
I have to text the lady that's supposed to talk to us about the grant.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is about.
That was why we're only gonna propose the pitch. I mean, there was only parts of it we were gonna do with that, for that very reason. I'll ask that.
Yeah, apply to the entire project.
I have a question. Why ask for a community vote if you want to agree to a buy-in?
Oh, I ran. I didn't say I wouldn't abide by what, because I said I wouldn't.
I'll go to the.
I said I wouldn't go off of bad grants. I said it depends on.
He said, the question was asked, if there was an advisory vote and the community proved that they wanted it. Jeannie, did you not ask if there was an advisory vote and the community wanted? Yes. Would
I'm just
job. Did a great job.
Thank you.
My car, so we had money to pay in the whole thing. You know, I remember talking to you about it. You got the money, go try it.
Does it start to feel like a regular court meeting now?
Yes, very few people. All right, we will convene again. The next item on the agenda is broadband. Any of you could bring up any project updates?
Well, I sent you one in the packet. There are things to discuss. Let's see, where, oh, there it is. So as you all know, inflation is rampant, and this project, we applied for this project, the money for this project a year ago. So costs have gone up. Luckily, we have, with this curb project, this is very flexible funding, and we have a certain project area. In fact, we tried to enlarge it when we applied. And so if we don't have enough money, we can shrink the size of the project. So there's no, the project isn't in trouble because of the inflation. It just may affect how many houses we can reach. They also, every project, both curb and Public Works Board and the broadband office are people like projects they're putting out for bid, they're coming in higher than they expected. And in fact, a PUD put out one recently that had no responses, and it was a $6 million project. No contractors responded. So I just wanted to give you that update. I think that the funding agencies are discussing providing more funds. And I hope Kara, are you on here still? All right, I need to text, let's see. We have the Petrichor is here. Kara from Petrichor was supposed to be in the meeting. Hang on a minute. Anyway, so we have been digging for, oh, okay. She's texting me. Are you on? Sorry. She was been waiting for 3 hours, so. Anyway, so we have been seeking quotes for fiber. If we included the fiber with the construction, then the contractor would mark it up, and we don't want to have to pay that markup. So we're trying to buy fiber. And so we have received multiple quotes from multiple companies. We put out an RFQ. None of them except, well, we got one today that's pretty good. Oh, she says I can't hear her. All right, so let me find her. All right, Kara, are you on a phone? Oh, let's see. She can't. Oh, she's on a phone. Okay. Let me see if I can unmute. What phone number are you on, Kara? Oh, ending in 0179. Okay.
Hang up and call back.
There it is. Let me just unmute her. It could be that there's, oh, I can't unmute her. Oh, boy.
There she goes.
No. Let me try again. There it is. Let me try. Unmute.
She's got to do it.
No, it's not working. Kara, can you call back or else just call my cell phone? Or hang up and try again? Anyway, so we have been looking into the fiber. We had asked for quotes for armored and unarmored. There's a lot of debate whether or not armored or unarmored is best. If it's armored, it's supposed to keep the squirrels out, but we know that the squirrels chew through the armor anyway. But I think armored is probably best. But anyway, so she's in the waiting room now, she says. Okay. All right, Kara, can you hear us? Can you speak now? Can you unmute? Now, it is just not working.
Unmuted and unmuted again.
There she is.
I'm here. I can hear you. I'm good.
Okay. You guys all remember Kara from the original meeting? Okay. Okay, Kara, so I was just giving them a little bit of a update on the fiber. Do you want to talk a little bit about the costs and the state? And then we can talk about that specific quote we got today and see if we can figure out how to move forward?
Yeah, so fiber materials costs are going up right now due to demand. And I talked with the broadband office today. They're really well aware of this. They have awards that they're waiting to go to contract on right now. And all three funding agencies, CURB, which is what your grant funding is under, the Public Works Board, and the broadband office are working together on how they're going to make sure all of these projects, as some of those materials costs go up, how they all go to completion. So the broadband office is on things they haven't gone to contract on yet, working on those pieces, adding in some funding there. It's all going to be addressed by the funding agencies to make sure that nobody gets to the end of the project and has $2,000 of material costs that stops it from being successful. So it's being discussed. We actually met with Senator Murray's staff on Monday. They were over from DC, and at the federal level, they're also making sure that the state is planning these in for all of these grant programs, all the money that's coming through. So the materials costs on this project are higher than the initial budget piece. There is a 25% contingency that was put into this entire application. The materials are more than that contingency, but with all of the other support that we're getting from the funding agencies, it should still be able to move forward.
Actually, Kara, they're not more than the contingency, they're less.
Okay, thank you.
We had a 500,000 contingency, so.
Yes, more than, yeah, they're not
it's
more
way
than the
less.
entire contingency.
Way less, yeah, it's way less.
So, no, that's fine. I was thinking percentage wise, this might have been a little bit more percentage, but the contingency total amount, no, they are way less than that. So right now, the challenge is projects need to be kind of dynamic, and quotes aren't valid for very long. And we need to be able to purchase materials. Right now, you can purchase materials that you can get maybe this year, if you're lucky. Port of Whitman, we ordered some fiber last fall, and we're not going to get it till April of 2023. So Jenny has located some quotes that they are able to ship the fiber this year. It's armored fiber. It's fiber that was put in a similar location on another project by the Kalispel tribe. Port of Whitman's purchased materials from this company, Power Intel. So I'm familiar with the company, I'm familiar with the product, familiar with contractors who have put it in and installed it, familiar with contractors who have spliced it, and very recent project that is turning up fiber to the home on it as well. So hopefully that provides some comfort in a world of buying materials that are new and.
Right, and so this is about 250,000 total. That includes the tax, and but there are two pieces that the Port of Whitman and the Port of Skagit. Am I right, Kara? The 96 count and what was the other one? The 96 and the.
There's 48 count and 96 count that also need to be used for this project, and this company, Power Intel, is going to provide a quote for those two. There also, Whitman has some of those in stock. So if Whitman's is cheaper, that's an option to just purchase it because it's already in stock. And the same, the 432 count, that's 432 strands of fiber. The Port of Skagit installed that in cooperation with their PUD, and they have a 20,000 foot spool left over that they're willing to sell the Port of Columbia for $2.23 a foot. And this quote, it's kind of confusing because they quote it by the 1,000 foot, but basically it equates to $3.33 a foot. So there's going to be, in order to get the best pricing, your port might have to do some purchasing from a couple different vendors or sister ports if you choose, to make sure that you get the biggest cost savings that you can, while also ensuring that the materials you get are high quality and will work for your project.
Well, and these are actually, we think they're made domestically, which isn't that right? They're made in
Yes.
America?
Yep, this is a
Which-
domestic
Yeah,
product.
this is the domestic product, and it's actually the best price we've found so far. But it's not, like I said, it's not all of it. So what Kara and I talked about would work best is if you could authorize us to spend up to 350,000 and then let us do this mixing and matching and try to find the best price we can for, that will come on time to let us start the project on time. That is what would be best for what we're looking for.
So the different fiber cable from different sources is compatible to connect to one another and they don't.
Yes, we had, in our quotes, we had asked for all the same manufacturer, right? But Kara didn't you talk to Mark about this fiber? Yeah, she talked to Mark about this fiber. And they said it was good stuff and it could be spliced with what the Port of Skagit and the Port of Whitman have on hand that is so much less expensive. So is that right, Kara? Did I cover that okay?
Yep. So, 20 years ago, you might be taking a chance when you purchase fiber cables from different vendors, different manufacturers, and having it splice up and match really well and reducing the loss. It could still be done. But since then, a couple things have happened. Number one, industry has just improved their practices. So that's a huge difference. But second of all, a lot of the glass is made by Corning or OFS, two American-based companies that produce glass. And so between those, the improvements over time, and then also a lot of the glass gets shipped out for other people to cable, but it's really made by two companies mostly. We're not seeing those issues at all anymore. And this cable, like we said before, is being used. And the Kalispel tribe installed this, and they purchased some 216 cable that was OFS fiber, and it all spliced up just fine between that and their other manufacturing. So I don't have any concerns about that.
And we don't pay until it comes. So it's not like I'm asking to write a check for $350,000, just asking for us to be able to piece this together and then pay as it comes. So because the granting agencies would look unfavorably upon us acting like it was not all one chunk of material. We're having to follow federal procurement rules for this.
How much do we have budgeted?
I don't know. I think it was about 200,000. I mean,
We're about 100.5 over.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, when we're asking for 350, we're not going to spend 350, but we don't, if we ask for 300 and it's 301, then we have to come back to you. So Kara and I went through this pretty carefully and really decided that that was a safe cap, that we will do everything we can not to get to, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So can we have, do we need?
Do you have questions? Do they have questions? Any more questions?
I think you already answered it, Kara. This is Commissioner Watts. But as far as speccing out, this doesn't limit our spec out, what we originally are trying to accomplish with the scope of work or anything like that, right?
No, this won't limit it at all. This will provide all the fiber that you need for that project, and you'll be good.
Well, and there's a few reels. I mean, there might be, because we're buying full reels, because if we ask them to be cut, then it costs us. And we have a second project that we have funding for. So we could use that on the second project, and the second project would pay for it. Or we could sell it like these other ports are, if for any reason we didn't need it. So
Right.
it's not much extra, just a little bit.
The other question I probably have for you. So if we're talking about or over budget or anticipate that.
Right.
And it's past our if it gets over our contingency type deal, do we have a ballpark of what that looks like in the shrinking of the project?
Well, when we had the designer draw the map, he went way out the paddock. That was not the original intent. So it would be, it's unfortunate. It's like, how do you pick? But you basically go from the outside in.
But that's the original intent of what we told people we were doing.
We did. We said we would go as far as we could. Yes, we said we would go as far as we could. Yeah. It's unfortunate. And I actually, Kara, she's very plugged into state broadband office. And there's a lot of broadband money and federal support. I think Kathy McMorris Rogers talked about it today. I think there will be money to make these projects whole if it's too far over. But for now, we're fine, you know, we're $2 million away from being over budget. We've got lots of money left. It's just.
What's the process when we get to a point where we have to make those decisions of cutting? Who's involved with that process?
Okay, so that would happen when we put the project out for bid for construction. So then when the bids came back, then we know where we stand.
Okay.
And there are laws that dictate how much you can cut a project without just putting it back out to bid. We might have to put it back out to bid.
Okay.
And this is a major project, so this is a public bid. You know, we'll put it out and it'll be a public opening of the bids in front of commissioners. It's not just a get quotes, it's a public bid. Anything over 300,000 is a public bid. So that would be the point. And of course, Kara would be involved, also Mark, Zero DB, who did the design. Of course, they would be involved because they'd be able to help us figure out what spots might have to be shortened up.
And as we talked about when we went ahead with this, Kara, I believe, was there. She helps us along the way because she's a subject matter expert. So we'll rely on that expertise. That's what we're paying her for. So continue on that road, I guess.
Do we need a motion?
You definitely need a motion, if you could, to authorize up to 350,000 for fiber procurement, fiber materials.
Do we have a motion from one of you to purchase up to, or to spend more, up to 350,000, which we're hoping it will not be that high?
Anticipated around 300 though.
200 and, was it?
Well, this is 250, but we've got to buy the 94 and the. Kara, what is your estimate right now? What do you think we can do this for?
I think 300 is probably pretty close, but will it be 305 or 295? I can't really guess. But what we're trying to do is get purchase, approval of a purchase up to a certain amount. You can see this pricing is valid. Well, maybe you can't. It's really big on my screen, but this pricing is valid through April 29th. And so there's just a timeline to all of this. And every time we mix and match and go out for one more quote, we need to, ideally, Jenny needs the authorization to be able to be like, okay, we've got the best thing. We need to lock it in so that
right here,
we don't lose all those quotes. I purchased fiber in January and I got a quote for the exact same manufacturer, exact same fiber count last week. And it was 40 cents per foot more expensive. And so there's a little anxiety, how much will it continue to go up every other month? So being able to be nimble is a good thing at this point, if it's possible.
And tell them how ahead we are of others. We're in a good spot. Our project is ahead of many. So now's the time.
Yes.
Buy the fiber.
I just think it's important that we make sure that we are servicing as large as number of the community as we can for as little money as possible. Obvious, but it'd be nice to get this sooner than later.
Well, our hope is that we don't shrink it at all, honestly. That's the goal.
So.
Any other thoughts, any questions?
No, I think that's what I had.
Okay, would one of you like to make a motion to purchase the fiber optics according to this bid, not to exceed to 350,000?
Yeah, I'll make that motion, motion to not to exceed $350,000 for that fiber.
Thank you, Johnny. I have a second?
Go ahead and second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to purchase the fiber optic cable not to exceed 350,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is that an aye? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Okay, motion passed. The next item on the agenda is housing.
So Seth, when he came and met with me, expressed his interest in learning more about housing. And, we had put the community council off last meeting. So I asked them if they could come to the May meeting and present, and they said yes. So just want to check with you all and make sure that's good. Have them come and give us some housing statistics for Columbia County. maybe, I don't know if there's any other projects going on. Maybe we could hear if the city or county has anything going on. Maybe we could hear from them too.
What else do we have going on in May? Anything major on our agenda coming up?
Oh, God, not so far. I hope not. No, I don't, other than, I don't think so. No, I think housing, yeah.
Good time.
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent. Okay.
We do need to go to the marina at some point, but we usually do that in the recreation season.
Let's wait for good weather.
Yeah, let's do it warm.
All right, the next item on the agenda is an executive session to discuss real estate per RCW 42.30.110. At this time, this is to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price, or to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of decreased price. At this time, Jenny, how much time do you expect this executive session to last?
Oh, gosh, I guess I would say 30 minutes.
Okay, it is 8:33 right now. We will be in executive session until 9:03.
Well, and I will say that I don't expect us to take any action.
Right.
Okay,
So
no action is
no
expected.
action will be taken at the end, so you're welcome to stay until I call you back in and adjourn the meeting, or you may leave at this time. Thank you very much. So we are going into executive session.
All right, I got to figure out how to put people in the waiting room from here.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
Oh, I don't know how to do it.
Was. That's a lot. Surprises me that it's not anticipated. That's all right, we'll have a conversation.
I don't know how to do it. I guess I could just turn the sound off. No, I just don't know how to do it from this thing. I mean, I know how to do it here, but
I'll see you later.
I don't know how to do it. Let's do it.
Who's talking?
All right, so I guess I'd better just mute it because I don't know how to put people in the waiting room with this system. So I'm going to mute the mic. Except I don't think anybody's on left. And, oh, there's one. There's one phone number.
Okay. It's 8:55. We're adjourning, we're exiting the executive session and we're adjourning the meeting. Thank you, everyone who was on. It's 8:55, Melody.
What do we need to do about this room? Do we have to pick it up? Is that,
Oh, I gotta put the chairs away. Yeah, but I don't know if I have to do it tonight. But yeah, I gotta, yeah,
gotta do it sometime, right?
yes.
Meeting is 8:55. Adjourned. Thank you.
All right, so here we go. Let's see what happens when I.
I don't think we can finish meeting.
Jesse, can you hear me? Our meeting is adjourned. Whoever's still on here, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.